meeting in the last month. I do apologize if you have any trouble hearing me today. I have been having some internet audio issues, but please do let me know, and then I'll just switch to my phone or I'll make something happen so that it's still easy for you to access all the info that you need throughout the meeting. All right, so to get started, as per usual, we just need to do our usual roll call. So let me real quick bring up our list. And we'll begin with Bowie State. Who's here from Bowie State today?
I am Anissa Caldwell. I'm the Vice President of the Graduate Student Association.
Welcome, Anissa. Happy to have you.
I'm also here. I'm quite new. I'm the Chairman of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Yes, welcome, Khalil. We're so happy that you want to chair the DEI committee. Thank you. And then okay, I think we're good. And then who's here from Coppin State?
Acknowledgement from President Trump that he has been defeated by President Biden in this election. He's following up with a series of conspiracy theories that are not accurate.
Anybody? No? Okay. Who is here from Frostburg?
Hey, everybody. It's Thomas. I am the Governance Committee Chair for Frostburg's SGA. I don't think Noah's going to be able to make it today. I want to say he couldn't get out of work, if I remember correctly. But I'm happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you, Thomas. Welcome back. Your statement that you helped provide in less than 24 hours went to QSIF, the Faculty Council, and they passed it. That was pretty cool. Yeah. All right. Who's here from Salisbury?
Good morning. It's Dave McCurry, President of the Student Government Association for Salisbury University.
Welcome back, David.
And then Casey Kasser, the Graduate Council President from Salisbury.
Nice. Welcome back, Casey. And who do we have from Towson today?
Hi, everyone. I'm Feli. I'm the treasurer of Towson University's SGA. I'm here in replacement of the president. The vice president will take over around 12.
Sounds good. Thank you. And thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoy. Next, do we have anyone from University of Baltimore?
I'm April King. I'm the secretary of the SGA.
I'm Randy Wells, one of the senators from SGA.
Awesome. Welcome back, April and Randy. And then who is here from UMB?
Hi, I'm Marissa. I'm the vice president of the USGA.
Thanks. Welcome back, Marissa. Awesome.
Hi, I'm Emily Smith. I'm new. I'm the Graduate Student Association president at UMB.
Welcome, Emily. If you have any questions, let us know. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
And who's here today from UMBC?
I think it's in the chat. Mershad's introduced himself.
Mershad's back. Excellent. And thanks, Niv. And is anybody here for the grads? That's all right.
Is it UMGC, you said?
UMBC.
Okay.
I know we have a lot of similar sounding acronyms in our system. And then next up, do we have anyone here from College Park?
Hey, Annie, this is Arslan.
Hey, welcome
Both
back.
Dan's are here.
Hey, Dan.
Also here. Oh, yeah, Ben's here.
Oh, Ben's here, and our other Dan is here. We have a whole.
Hi, good morning, Annie.
Good morning. We have a lot of College Park folks here today. I guess I'm technically College Park, but all right. Next, who do we have here from UMC's?
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna. I'm the chair of UMC's Graduate Student Council.
Welcome back, Anna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kia. I'm the co-chair of the UMC's Graduate Student Council.
Cool. Welcome, Kia. Good to see you again. All right, that brings us to Eastern Shore. Who's here from Eastern Shore today?
Hi, my name's Jocelyn Simmons. Good morning, everybody. I'm the graduate student council president. It's nice to be here.
It's really nice to have you, Jocelyn. Welcome. Next up, we have UMG, unless I'm missing some from Eastern Shore before I accidentally go too fast. Okay. Then we have Global Campus. Who's here from UMGC?
That's me, Tangela. Tangela for graduate. Graduate in diversity and inclusion, co-director of diversity and inclusion.
Hi, it's Ashley Esposito. I'm a member of Student Advisory Council for UMGC.
Cool. Great to have you, Tangela and Ashley. And I think.
And Beth, my name is Beth Coleman. I'm the UMGC graduate representative.
Cool. It's so great to have you all. All right. And who do we have from Shady Grove?
Hi, I'm here, Ike. I am a member of graduate student, and I am the chair of event and initiative.
Very cool. Welcome back, Ike. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
It's great to see you all. And we will be shifting pretty quickly into our report. So just give me a second to get my share screen up and going.
I was having trouble getting in. I'm LaShawna Wright, the Chief Justice from Coppin for SGA.
Thanks, LaShawna.
The president should be joining around 1 p.m., so I'm filling in for her until then.
We're happy to have you. Hope you enjoy. Have fun. Welcome, LaShawna. All right. Well, we have lots of great updates for folks today. So here we go. Let me go ahead and do. Oops.
Sorry, I was talking. I didn't know I muted myself.
It's okay. Welcome back, Benjamin.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, here we go. So. And. Okay. So we still always want to keep our reminder every month that we are very community centered here, and we exist as a community for a greater community that we represent. And in all of our work, no matter what we talk about today, from government relations and MCE to the executive order statement to picking a student region, all of that is all about growing and nurturing our community. So always just keeping that in mind and as our anchor. My report so far in the month, wow, just a lot going on. So I don't want to take up too much time. I do have a report up in OneDrive for folks to take a look if you want the detailed spiel. But I did want to let folks know that everyone here is welcome to the Joint Councils meeting. It will be later on this week. It's on the 19th. I sent along the agenda for that meeting for those who are interested in coming. It is hosted by College Park, and it will be featuring Regent Gossett, Chancellor Perman, Dr. Pines, the new president of College Park, as well as like Patrick Hogan, the vice chancellor, and some other great folks if you want a chance to be with faculty and staff councils and to hear important things going on at government and institutional level. So feel free to join. You're all welcome. You don't have to register or anything. Just join as and when you want. Then other things that we've been up to this month that have taken priority have been to make sure that we're working well with all the various entities in the state to help students in higher education. And one of those is MHEC. So the Maryland Higher Education Commission, we've mentioned a couple of times in meetings, but today they will actually have guests, and we have some overlapping members in the student advisory that are also on USMSC, and we'll have a great conversation about what does that mean and how can we all participate in ways that will help students across our system. Great news that we unanimously passed the DHS statement of opposition to that proposed rule. I want to thank all of you personally for getting that turnaround so quickly that we could say unanimous and that we could support international students across the system. That statement was pretty widely distributed. It was submitted to the Federal Register along with at the time, I believe it was over 28,000 comments. So hopefully the opposition is being heard loud and clear. We also had last month, we had the folks from Mary Perg do a really cool presentation on the climate work that they're doing. If you haven't been able to get in contact with them yet and want to, please just put it in the chat and we'll make sure that you get an introduction to the folks who came last time, Grishma and Reese and Sarah. Something that I'm hearing a lot, I've gone now to some specific communities to try to hear and listen more on disability and difference during times of COVID as students, and I'm hoping that can be a part of the conversation. I've heard quite a bit from Shady Grove, UMGC, and College Park so far, but hopefully it can be a part of a bigger discussion. And then I just want to let you all know that I've been continuing to plug with both the staff and faculty councils, as well as other conversations, continued advocacy for flexibility during this time of COVID, both as the COVID accommodation conversation we've continued to have, as well as bereavement flexibility. So that advocacy continues. And with that, I'll pass it over to Bernetta.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Annie. So yeah, just to add to what Annie has already said about the DHS statement, that was just really tremendous work, right? Bringing everybody together and really actually great leadership. So kudos to you, Annie, because she did most of that work, you know, and we all got to chime in and support and provide our input as well. And that's the type of collaboration that we want to continue throughout the year. There's a lot happening. And we want to catch it all. We want to be as involved as we can be and working on the behalf of our students. So kudos again to everyone, and thank you, Annie, for that. You know, part of my focus as we are moving into the year, we have so much positive momentum. We have so many great leaders across our campuses, student leaders, and we're doing so well working with faculty and USM and our liaisons. And that's really exciting going forward. We're seeing a lot of policies, a lot of bills, a lot of regulations that we are realizing we're going to have to take on. And so I want to make sure that is going to be part of my focus and understanding what students need, how these policies and these bills are going to affect all of us, and what we need to do to be able to advocate on behalf of our students. So that's a big deal right now. We're working really closely with our board of directors. Both Laura and I were able to meet with them over this past month. And that's going really well, getting them up and running and finding out what they need to be successful in their roles, as well as helping them to identify how they can be most effective as well. Part of that is going to include expanding engagement with students, working with our committees, our new committees that we've stood up, and learning how best to do that, and through the various types of outreach that we're doing, especially through our comms and our comms committee. And so that's really exciting, the work that we're planning there. And then of course, you know, we're all following this election and the outcome, and no matter who you voted for, our goal is to continue moving forward and to be keeping abreast and staying aware of what's happening in the big picture and how that's going to trickle down and affect all of us. So that's pretty much all I have today. Thank you, everybody. And I look forward to the great work that I know we're going to continue to do.
Thanks so much, Bernetta. Awesome report, and thanks for all that you continue to do. And we'll pass it along to another VP who's been tremendously busy. Laura, what have you been up to?
Okay, hi. All right, so in response to conversations with graduate representatives, we held a networking for graduate leaders virtual event last month. It was a success. I had a lot of fun. I think everyone else did too. Another one is scheduled for next Thursday. So we hope to get some less familiar faces so we can grow our effective network as student leaders and professionals. Personally, I believe that if we develop the networking aspect and benefit of USMSC, we can offer that as a practical personal incentive for more students to be involved now and in the future. Also, in response to concerns from grad reps, I've been continuing research, discussions, and meetings on how we can empower our graduate student employees. If you want to talk more about that, please reach out to me directly. This month, our board of directors and committees got underway, as we talked about. My goal as the VP is to support these entities as much as possible and help promote the effectiveness of USM student action and hopefully demonstrate the value of the USMSC Collective for other students looking for ways to get involved or make an impact. I don't want to just have us sit around and things die in committee. I'd really like there to be, see what we can do to make stuff happen. Currently, I am in development on compiling student veteran contacts, whether via student groups or campus veteran centers, or if they have it, designated officers. Some campuses, schools have it, some don't. My initial goal right now is to make contact with this demographic to generate interest in USMSC and our committees, and secondly, to develop relationships with school veteran communities and USMSC for future and potential collaborations, to kind of lay that groundwork. And finally, I have a plea for some help. If anyone has experience in organizational charts beyond MS Office, I've been working to create kind of a better internal tool that we can use to illustrate the organizational network of the USMSC. It's really complicated. We have a hard time describing it to each other. And that's something we talk about in every meeting pretty much. So I know I'm a visual person, and I know some of the organizational charts that we have for the school as itself are not exactly as detailed as they need to be for us to speak to each other effectively about how things work. So I'm trying, and if anyone has any experience, hit me up. I could really use some help. That's about it.
That was great, Laura. Thank you. And you're so right. And yes, visuals will be awesome. So hopefully somebody out there has that skill set and wants to add this to their portfolio. All right. There we go. And then we have had so much coming out of student affairs. We're so happy to have Benjamin and Dan, and they've really been heading up the leadership for what we're going to discuss later, which is the executive order statement. But for now, I'm going to let them talk to you about everything they're up to. So Dan and Ben, all you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Unfortunately, I have been really busy with work. As I told you guys before that I'm in the health field, and this COVID hasn't made anything easy. However, I'm so happy that Dan have been able to accomplish a lot. In my last conversation with him, he indicated that we will attend the committee on education policy and student affairs meeting on November 23rd, and that will bring an update. Second point, the White House's executive order, we are working on our statement. I think Anne stated that we'll be talking about that later today. Dan also indicated that he met with 3 SGA's leaders to discuss academic relief. And during our conversation, he mentioned that students they found that students are not getting as much relief to help them during this challenging time. And we will also attend the Student Affairs Committee meeting that will be coming up on November 24th, 2020 at 1 p.m. We will bring updates back to the meeting. I think at this point, that's all I have.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ben. All right. Next, we have diversity and inclusion. So Tangela and Paige, what do you got for us?
I could chime in. So we've met with the chair this past week, and also we've been talking about forming committees. Also moving forward, the role of the committees that we would discuss with them. Also holding weekly, not meetings, but just conversations, like chiming in with email or either a phone call or text. I don't know if Paige wants to jump in, but that's pretty much the gist of it.
Well, we've been meeting with our chairman, like Tangela said, and this past month on November 6th, we actually met with the USM diversity and inclusion members just to see what's going on at each institution to make sure everything's good across the board. From what I've heard, it sounds like a lot of schools are being really proactive. They have their own little diversity and inclusion groups, and it's really diverse. They have students and faculty working together and having conversations that need to be held. So it sounds like everything's going good so far. So yeah.
Annie?
Yeah?
This is Joe Baughman. I would just also add, I don't know whether any of the folks on the diversity and inclusion group would be interested, but every year, all of our campuses have to submit a report on their diversity plans and their activities. That was presented at the September meeting of.
Oh, you muted, Joe.
Sorry, I have to, you know what, all the presidents, we've decided that every time we do that or start talking without unmuting ourselves, we're adding to a scholarship fund. We're penalizing ourselves. So now I have to donate. The Ed Policy and Student Life Committee in September had that report. It's almost a 300-page report listing all of the diversity and inclusion activities on all of the campuses. And Tangela and Paige, you can either email me. Zakia is not with us yet today. She'll be in a little bit later, but we'll be happy to make sure that you have a way to tap into that. And it's obviously a comprehensive report. That report has to be done every year for MHAC.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, that's great. And well, I'll just do it. If anybody wants to be on the DEI committee or has somebody that they would like to be on it, let us know in the chat or email us so that we can help connect them to Khalil and Paige and Tangela so we can help that committee be in the works. Because we're noticing, we put together over Friday, I think, Laura actually made a really cool format to look at all of our committee members. We have a lot of people from College Park, Global Campus, and UMBC, and we'd love to see members on committees from the other institutions as well. So a little hope, I'm gonna throw it out there, to get reps from all over so everybody feels heard and included. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure thing, of course. And that goes for all the committees, including government relations, which is up next. And I know Arsalan and Yvonne have been very busy as well. So tell us what you've been up to.
Sure. Ben, do you want to start with the MCE update?
Hey, sorry, I'm here. So sorry, Dan, Albert, and I are roommates, so that is why there was an echo. Okay, Annie, do you have the bill up, or can you give me screen share?
I was going to pull it up for you, but if you want control, I can also just, if that's easier for you, I can also do that. That's actually a good idea. So one second.
Yeah, just do that.
Yeah, that will be easier than me trying to toggle it for you. Stop screen share. Screen share.
I got it.
You got it? Do you send it? You have it? Cool.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So hi, everyone. I am Ben Bateman. I'm the Director of Government Affairs at College Park. I was the undergrad vice president last year on the council. So this is a bill that I wanted to bring in front of the entire council before I submitted it, but then due to some, procedure in the Maryland General Assembly, I had to submit it early. So I'd love to hear all of your feedback, going forward. So basically what this is establishing a process across the system to give preferential admission and hiring for people who are formerly working in the Maryland Correctional Enterprises, which is the industry arm of the Maryland prison system. So right off the bat, one of the changes that I'm going to be instituting to this, it's already gone through actually, I just don't have the updated bill, is that this is going to be for all four-year public higher education. I'm currently working on reaching out to Morgan and St. Mary's to include them in it. So I think, Annie, you can send it out, but I just wanted to go through here, just going through, there was one line that I really wanted to put out that I'm blanking on now. But yeah, so only people who worked in MCE, not people who were working in the general prison system. making sure that we are actually doing outreach to these people. Not just giving the opportunity, but actually saying, here's the opportunity and this is how you can be involved. One of the things that we've already heard back is that a lot of times people who are working in MCE are also co-enrolled in community college, which already gives them a leg up in getting into the USM. And so the outreach section of this kind of accounts for that. And then, yeah, again, the preference section I think is really important. I'm basically basing that off of Georgetown from 4 or 5 years ago. They came out with a big report of how the entirety of Georgetown University was based off the sale of slaves in 16 something, 17 something. And so they now give preferential admission to the descendants of those slaves in the same way that they give preferential admission to, the grandchildren of alumni and all that kind of stuff. So this isn't going to be giving any financial incentive, but it will be providing preferential admission. So I think that is a pretty quick overview. Does anyone have any questions off the bat?
Yeah, Ben, this is Joe Boffman. Is there going
Hey,
to?
Joe.
Oh, it's going to be Delegate Ivy's bill. I'm sorry, that went past me before I saw it. Okay.
Yeah. So Delegate Ivy is submitting it, and then the Senate sponsor I'm still working on.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe Ross already has a copy of it. So.
Okay, well, I'll make sure Patrick Hogan does too.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, Ben, could you tell folks how this differs from past asks and why it differs? I think it's a good reason why, and maybe it'll be helpful for folks to know.
Yeah, so kind of the prevailing, I think, activist ask across the system for the last, as long as I can remember, has been to abolish our contract with MCE. The USM does not have a contract with MCE. It is state law that all state entities use MCE as a preferred, preferred distributor. So first and foremost, in any arm of government, whether that is state legislators, whether that's the governor's office, whether that's the USM offices, all need to buy furniture from the Maryland Correctional Enterprises. And so instead of, saying we're going to overhaul this law, I, for two reasons, thought this would be a better, option. It's going to be easier to attain. And then also, a lot of people who are employed by MCE do enjoy having the work and having the opportunity to earn money. It is something important for them to be able to build a skill while they're in prison, and also to have that little extra cash on the side. There's other issues that are involved in that whole process, but I think those are kind of outside the purview of what we can do through higher education. And so that's where I was going with this, kind of helping out on the, the reincarceration aspect of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Do you have questions for folks?
Do I?
Yeah, like, are there certain ways you want people to maybe get involved, or do you want?
Yes, great point. So right now, I'm still working, like I said, on getting a Senate sponsor for this. In the General Assembly this year, there's going to be, most work is going to be done on policing. And so I've already heard that there won't be a ton of motivation for this. I think what our goal as a council would be is to get this a hearing in both chambers and possibly out of committee. Just making some noise on it and making sure that it is, known to be a priority for us. And one of the ways that you all can help with that is making sure to bring in your student groups. So I already talked to Arsalan about this, but bringing in the ACLU, the NAACP, and then what was the third main group that I was talking about, like Maryburg. And so those are the most active, obviously, across the system, but every single campus has their own groups who I think would be interested in this. And so having them write letters to legislators on the behalf of this, and then also I'm sure we'll do a broad letter and have everyone co-sign it and put that out pretty publicly. And so the more people we can have sign on, the better. And already a lot of legislators have told me that, if they see a bunch of people on here, they're going to be much more interested in giving it the time of day. As for like the lobbying side, I'm just going to handle that for now until we get closer to session. But I think the organizing support for it, over the next month and a half, just talk to your campuses and let them know that this exists, and we love to have their input and their support.
Thank you, Ben. And we do have a
Yeah.
question for you in chat. Lashana from Coppin is asking, where can we read more about this? And I would start by saying, Lashana, we sent a bunch to everybody who's on our listserv. So we can make sure that gets to you too. But Ben, are there like general resources folks can get to as well?
I don't think it's posted on the MGA website yet, just because it hasn't been officially submitted yet. So it should be public like mid-December. I think right now, yeah, probably the best way to get it is just Andy sending it to you.
Sounds good. So Essence has it, Lashana, and if you don't, I'm happy to forward it to you. Can you just put your email in the chat, and then I'll make sure I have it. Thanks, Lashana. And that goes for any other guests we have here today, or people who aren't typically on here, like Khalil, if you want on here, or other new folks who might be in here as well, like Kyle. If any of you want it as well, just put in your email. We'll make sure we get it to you.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
About the bill. So is it basically to allow former prison inmates who worked in under the MCE to get into colleges better?
Yes. So it's two factors. It's preferential admission and preferential hiring. So, getting into college, isn't necessarily the best or the right option for people. And if not, the preferential hiring is also, that's what that exists for. There is jobs across every single campus that provide a good like re-entry opportunity, and giving them that kind of that leg up in getting those jobs is why that's there.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Annie, can I ask a question to Ben as well? Ben, I was looking at our post-session report from 2020, and I didn't see this bill in that report. Has this bill been introduced previously? And if so, was there a USM position?
No, I wrote this bill like 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I assume once it gets introduced, I'm assuming we'll have a USM position on it, but that'll be more of a Patrick thing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I have talked to Patrick. So over the summer, there was some discussion across the USM leadership of wanting to do something about our relationship with MCE. I talked to Patrick about it, and he was kind of like, yeah, I will get back to you, and didn't. So we've also talked to the College Park president and kind of got the same answer of like, yeah, we want to do something, but we don't really have any ideas. And so I kind of just went ahead and said, here's what we're going to do.
So this is Joe Bachman. Nate, in response to you, we'll have to look at this, and there would be at least two avenues that we would pursue. One would be through the provosts, and to get their response, because that would talk about the academic side of the issue. And I will also share it with Carolyn Skolnick, who's in charge of HR at the system level, but she could talk to the HR directors about it too. I honestly don't know what the USM position would be. I saw in the language Ben had carefully inserted to the extent possible, and then go on about hiring, because we of course are obligated to go through certain layers of hiring. And the other thing I would just say to the students here is that nearly 2/3 of the students who are in the USM are actually transfer students. Half of those, or 1/3 of the 170,000 plus students we have, come to us via the Maryland community colleges. So we have just over 800 articulation agreements, 2+2 programs from 2-year to 4-year within the USM. So that in fact, we encourage students coming out of community college to go ahead and continue into our 4-year institutions. And because the community colleges have in fact, develop some of these relationships. We in fact are plugged into that system on the other side of the transfer out of the community colleges. And I'm going to stick my head out there and say that I would anticipate that some people coming out of the prison system might be better off at community college, closer to their home, rather than making the jump into a four-year institution, because they may have some gaps that community colleges are in fact better prepared to fill and make the students ready to succeed, because it's not only access to our institutions we want to provide, we want to make sure our students have success as well. So I will in fact follow up with both Patrick and Carolyn Spolder.
Yeah, so the community college aspect, I've spoken to a couple people at College Park about that. And so that's kind of why we have the outreach section in there as well, of making sure that, you know, we're actually advertising the resources that are going to be correct. And then, you know, once they are done community college, if they want to continue, this is then going to be an easier avenue to people who were incarcerated, have now finished community college, and now want to continue their education. Annie, did you want me to go over the other bills or no?
I don't know. Have we talked about them before?
I had just emailed you the one about student fees and the one about the Board of Regents.
Oh, it's up to you and Arslan. Like you, Arslan, is that cool?
May I add something? This is Javon, Government Relations. As far as the bill, this first bill, I would like to ask that we committed to the Government Relations Committee to help us understand exactly what USM can do, what the students can do before we move forward, and also that we don't maybe just the bill just slip under the rug and we forget about it. So just to ensure that we're following guidelines, I would ask that we commit that bill to the committee. And then as far as the other bills, then I think that we can discuss it a little bit. Myself and Ben from Student Affairs have talked about student fees this week. We've met, even though it's Corona, we did meet in person. However, I think it's something that we can kind of address. So if you don't mind, if you can just briefly explain the other bills and then we can move forward.
Sure, yeah, I'll be really quick.
Yeah, and by the way, Ben, I told Ben this, Yvonne, that, you know, we are ready to help him in any way. And we're going to commit this to our committee as well. And if there's any help with like hearings or getting folks out to testify on this bill, then we would also be happy to assist him in
that. Okay, so really quick, I will share my screen again. Okay, so this is another Delegate Ivey bill. I'm sure some of you are aware earlier in the year there was discussion of creating a separate HBCU system in Maryland. Delegate Ivey pulled that and is now putting this one forward, which is going to require that there be a certain breakdown of members on the Board of Regents. So the changes are here. 2 individuals with a background in labor, 1 individual with a background in immigration, 1 individual with a background in civil rights, and then 1 each from Bowie, Coppin, and UMES. So this would be expanding the Board of Regents by 7 members, and they would each have to have those backgrounds. He and I have talked about that a little bit, and it's more so just a way to increase representation for the HBCUs and for you know, some of the members, both at the employee level and the student level, who should be kind of represented more in the Regents, whereas they aren't currently. And then the last thing is, oh, that did not work. I thought that was going to work. Okay. So this one, Senator Rosa Peck and Delegate Ivey are going to be submitting it. Basically, super quick overview. In 2019, College Park did this reversion of our student fees, which involved them taking money out of a lot of funds that were paid for in part or full by student fees and putting them into other projects for which that money wasn't allocated for. And so some of those projects were paying university debt, our new sports research center, which does not benefit the entire student body as per the USM student fee policy, and then some economic development ventures. So basically what this bill is doing is creating a lockbox for student fee money. So when your money is, when you pay your student fee, that goes to that department alone and cannot be removed to be put into another purpose. So that's just my quick legislative update. Thank you all. And if you have any questions, hit up Arsalan, and he and I are in touch.
Thank you, Ben. If we can go into the other updates that we have as far as government relations. So on Monday, November the 9th, there was a Civil Engagement Committee meeting where we attended just to kind of debrief and to, it was an election debrief for different people on the council with different schools. Frostburg was there, University of Baltimore, and just how are students feeling and just moving forward. How do we move forward with the results of the election on both sides? How do we support the students on both sides? Whether you're happy or disappointed. As a council, we have to be neutral, regardless of what our party is. We have to be neutral and understand that the students are feeling some type of way. How do we support them? So our goal right now is figuring out ways of how to support, how to move forward, and how to even prepare for the election in the next 2 years. 4 years, of course, is a big one because of presidential, but even getting the students to understand the importance of voting. And I think USM did a great job with USM votes. I think we did a great job with civil engagement this year, even given the fact that we are virtual. So how do we keep that momentum going and make this a thing and not just a election year or election term? So just moving forward with that, we'll have another meeting within a month to follow up. We're working on some things with that. Some people from that council also want to join the Government Relations Council on USM, which is going to be great for us to streamline the process of this and also other things to come. The next thing, Arsalan and I had a meeting with Andy Clark and Patrick Hogan this week. Great meeting. There will be multiple meetings this year instead of just 1 or 2, but we have to make sure that we stay again in contact and everything is streamlined. Instead of having an advocacy day, we've thought about having an advocacy week. Given the fact that everything is virtual, we want to figure out how do we meet with the governor's staff, how do we meet with the delegates and the senators, and just bring everything together for the university system, student council, and it doesn't feel that we've missed a beat. I think given today's time, I think it's actually a great thing because a Zoom is, to me, it feels a little bit more personable when you know who's on the call and you have each other's contact right there. So that's what we're working on as far as coming out of that meeting. We talked about what are their most important things that they want us to work on as well as ours. We talked about Title IX. Of course, that's always important. Student fees. As I said, myself and Dan from Student Affairs, we met this week just talking about the pass or fail system as far as given the coronavirus is still in full effect. What do we do as far as students passing or failing or working from home? We talked about that with Patrick Hogan this week. And then Arsalan, you can fill in if I'm missing anything. I think we did a lot this week that I just want to make sure that we're getting the most important things out. We have a chair for our committee. We have members for our committee. We have meetings set for this week. Myself, Arsalan, and Nate will be meeting regularly to just make sure that Student Regent and government relations are connected, and I love the word streamline because it makes everything seem so organized. But Arsalan, do you have anything that you want to touch up on?
Yeah, I mean, Yvonne, you had everything spot on. One update that I do want to give you, Annie, is that we did talk to Patrick Hogan about the Mary Purg. So it does seem as though Delegate Solomon, who's the sponsor of that bill that they put forth, are in talks with Patrick Hogan. So that's good to hear. So I can definitely see some progress on that in the future. So yeah, that's all that I have.
Thank you all. Wow.
One other thing, Annie, just looking at some notes, as far as budget for student, for the USM is kind of a big thing that we do want to focus on, just how much we're getting funded. We had got some numbers from Patrick Hogan the other day. You know, USM as a whole, 6 billion, 1.5 as far as state billion. How do we make sure that the state is going to still fund our university systems without affecting the students, affecting the staff, the faculty? How do we keep going? How do we keep building the momentum of education? People are dropping out due to the given circumstances. So just making sure that we understand that. And because of that, we still want students to understand that when we do come back, their concerns aren't, you know, just kind of, we're not on campus, we're not gonna worry about it. So the topic of more green campuses came up. It might not be the number one thing on our list for this academic term. However, we want students to understand that we'll be in contact and we're gonna make sure that we are getting the more greenery and green living. Our son is better in this category with me, given his nature. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Yvonne was right. One issue that we'll be kind of working on a lot this advocacy week, or not this week, but you know, whenever it does happen, is the budget. And I think a lot of what Hogan was referring to again and again was just how the budget's going to be kind of pushed tight a little bit this year, just because of the COVID-19 requirements and measurements that are having to take place, and the lack of revenue that is also coming in. So just again, one thing just to keep you guys aware that budget's going to be a huge issue this year. So just be aware of that. Yeah.
One other thing, I'm sorry, guys. My notes are kind of all over the place. From the student led civil engagement committee, both of the chairs, their biggest thing is understanding how do we have a liaison between the council and the Board of Elections to ensure that students who may be in people come to university system from other states or transfer, as Joe mentioned before. How do we make sure that when they go to vote, that they're not getting a provisional or being pushed to the side, or it's taking them longer to vote? Just making sure that we have somebody on the Board of Election. Again, Patrick Hogan, our son and myself talked about that, as how do we connect with the stakeholders for that. So I think we covered everything. We'll give you guys an update in the next meeting.
Yeah, and one other thing, Annie, just as a reminder for everyone, make sure that you put in your director of government affairs' email address. We want to make sure we meet with them ASAP, at least before winter break, so that when the session starts, the legislative session starts in early January, that we're fully ready and equipped with everything that we need. So just try to make sure that you put in your emails as soon as possible.
Yes.
That was awesome. That was amazing. Thank you both so much for and Ben for coming too. Ben, it was awesome to have you back. For those who are new to council, Ben was part of council last year, so you can stay connected and keep doing awesome things no matter where you are. And thank you so much, Yvonne and Arsalan. I'm trying to remember. One thing I would say for everybody is that you heard some really great questions from Yvonne and Arsalan. Keep those questions in your head and ask them in other places too, as we try to figure out these things, because sometimes we have to ask the same questions in multiple places, like we're being asked about budget. But luckily, I know Nate will touch upon budget in the Regent update soon as well. But thank you all. That was a wonderful update. Okay, now we have our wonderful communications and marketing team, Niv and Naila Benet. What do you have for us?
Oh, sorry, I completely forgot to mute myself. I was taking notes and trying to live tweet. Apologies. So I have some good news. I've been working on a student Regent video, and it's coming along great. I would say it's about 60% done. I need to put the inputs from all the student Regents, and 4 or 5 of them got back to me and said that they were more than happy to share their insights about student Regent. I sent them the questions. So I think most of them should be coming by Monday or Tuesday. And so once that comes along, I'm just going to put everything together and the video should be ready from my end. And so I'm super excited to share that. I know I would have liked this to be already be done, given the 1 week turnaround, but I think everybody's just been busy with life, as to say. Apart from that, I've been updating the social media platforms, and I'm going to try and meet with just the president and the vice president soon. I've made a comprehensive list of all the future videos I'd like to take forward, not just for this semester, but the next semester as well. So I'm just waiting on that. Naila Benet has told me she's not here today, but she told me she's having a really crazy month this month. So we have been keeping in touch through emails, but I am going to try and set up a meeting with just all the communications people, but it's slightly been hard with her schedule currently. But the two of us are keeping in touch, and I'm currently handling the social media accounts, as well as I just did a live tweet a few minutes ago, as well as I'm just keeping a few things on track. And I think Neela Benet has some plans to add to the website. And oh, this is just from a UMB perspective. I know that UMB, I'm trying to get a lot of representation in the committees. So I'm going to be sending an email out probably tomorrow, along with my other campus-wide emails, to make sure UMB students can participate on all the committees. And I'm hoping to get some people with marketing and communications, because I have some experience, but I really have some ideas for some good interactive videos we can make for this semester. And so if we have people with more of digital marketing experience, that will help me tremendously.
Awesome. Thank you, Niv. That was fantastic. And did you want at some point today a group photo again? Do you need that again?
I think I would like that. I didn't want to say that at the beginning of the meeting. I'm going to put in the chat, and I'm also going to share the link. I'm still waiting on a few people for communications. I have my list, so I'm going to put that in the link, because I think I still need the names for all of them. I think a few other committees are also missing them. So I'm going to share that in the chat. If everybody can please do that. And also, I know who everybody is. I will personally message you if you don't respond on that.
That's right. So everybody just go do that real quick. That would be great. Thank you so much, Niv, for all you're doing and for doing what I think is impossible, which is giving a report while taking notes on myself. So kudos to you. You got skills.
Hey, thank you.
All right. And next we have our student regents report. So Nate, what would you like to share today?
Can you go to my next slide, Annie? This is the one I added like at midnight last night. I told you I'd get around to it. Sorry, I had a few assignments too, so it really was late, but it's there. So just to offer a brief update, and actually before I get into this, I want to just go back a few minutes and make a comment. As our government relations directors organize their committee, and as you're considering these bills that you're presented with, I would just stress the importance of caution. I would urge the committee and the student council to not make a position until the USM position is clear, because we wouldn't want a situation where the student council position is in opposition to the USM position. If we could avoid that at all costs, that'd certainly be beneficial, just because we all want to be working in tandem as a team. And I will say, I have a few concerns about predominantly the second bill that was mentioned there, but I don't want to get out ahead of myself. But I'd love to chat with our government relations committee about that more. And I know I meet with you guys later this week. But just as a general rule, I would just encourage the council to not take a position until we know what the USM position is. We wouldn't want to have any the appearance of division or opposition there. But getting into my update now, we recently had a Board of Regents meeting this past week. It was wonderful. We had a presentation by Dr. Shapiro and then our civic engagement student leaders who were on our student engagement committee. And that was really a great moment, because we were able to show that USM votes wasn't just a hashtag, but it's actually an action. And so we spoke about the civic engagement activities across our campuses. We had a wonderful report, and I really think the board was able to see the level of systemness that we really have amongst our institutions, where it's not just this effort at College Park or at UMBC or at Salisbury, but really we were all working in concert as part of this greater campaign that stretched across our entire system. And so really that civic engagement committee led by Dr. Shapiro and her team did an outstanding job, and their work is ongoing. That committee is going to continue to meet. So I was excited that the board got to see a little bit of that, because oftentimes the board doesn't always see what's going on, the finer details of things. So that was a wonderful opportunity. Moving on, following up from something that I know this committee was very interested in, and Annie, I know you did a lot of work on this, and so this was really a great moment for, I think, the committee as a whole, was that the revised naming policy was finally approved by the entire board. And so that was on our consent agenda, approved unanimously on that agenda. And so I know that's something that many of us on the student council had given feedback to when we met with Vice Chancellor Raley and his team as well. So that's passed, and just well done, team, on that one. I know that was something that really many hands went in across the system to have that change, to bring that about. Moving on to budgeting now, and this is actually a great segue because I had this on there and then I didn't even realize budget was going to be a topic we discussed, but you're absolutely right. You know, Yvonne and Arsalan, budget is very important for us, and it's something that as a student council, I think many of you don't always, you know, it might be something that you're not always looking at because it's kind of this big abstract thing, and when it comes to billions of dollars, it's very hard to conceptualize what that is and, you know, where that money's going. And I will say, as a board, we passed a bond resolution amendment to allow the system to incur, I believe it was $88 million. We were going to increase our debt, taking advantage of low interest rates to really maintain liquidity throughout the system. So essentially, the system has been, you know, impacted by the effects of COVID, and also the General Assembly took away $130 million of our base funding, and so that's affecting us this year, and will also be affecting us in future years until they add it back in. So when we talk about budgeting and working with the General Assembly, at a very basic level, you know, pushing for a base funding increase is going to be important in the years to come because we're missing out on money right now due to the effects of the pandemic, which of course is understandable, but it just is something that we're all having to bear the effects of. So essentially, we increased, we had a bond resolution, so the system's going to take on some more debt, but it's the responsible thing to do because we really have great interest rates right now. And so it's, it's not, and also it's allowing us to maintain our liquidity throughout the system. So projects that you currently have at your institutions that have already been approved are going to, keep going. They're not going to hit brick walls by running out of money. And so that's why that's important for the system to maintain that liquidity. And, I'm not well-versed in economics. Vice Chancellor Herbst could do a much better job than I, but that's a very basic overview of where our budgeting, where we stand with that right now. So basically, we're on good footing, and we're being very fiscally responsible with our resources as they are stretched thin. And that goes for, all of our campuses. Money is stretched thin because this is a challenging time for all of us. And to that point, I will then segue to a topic of, I know the issue of student fees has repeatedly come up, and we were talking about cost of attendance earlier. And it is something that all of us wish our student fees were lower, and all of us want to break there. Yet something the Chancellor stresses time and time again, and I know Joe could attest to this as well, is that the cost of providing education is actually rising because we're having to buy PPE, we're having to, we still have, professors and faculties that we need to teach the classes. And so costs are actually rising because we're needing to invest in this technological infrastructure to provide the remote instruction and that asynchronous instruction that's currently, ongoing and that we're all benefiting from right now. And so when you add together the effects of budget cuts that come from the Board of Public Works and the General Assembly with added costs that we've incurred through COVID, the cost of providing that education that we're all benefiting from is actually rising. And so as much as we would all love to have our fees cut, that's just the situation that we're currently having to grapple with. And once again, that's a little bit of an overview that I can give on that topic, and others in the USM office could provide more detail. And Joe, please correct me if I'm wrong when I'm done here, if I miss anything. But that's my understanding of where we are from a budgetary perspective. Moving on in my report, I did want to, and all of this is on our public session agenda if you want to look at any of this, but we have a new standing committee on intercollegiate athletics. It was a work group and now it's a committee. I just wanted to bring that to your attention just because many of us are involved with athletics, or many of our students are. And so the importance in that is that a work group is just temporary. Now that it's a standing committee, it will be there to stay. And so any concerns that we have regarding athletics or those intercollegiate sports, we now have a committee that will be addressing that. And the board approved that just this past week. For UMGC, as many of you know, we have a president search that's ongoing, led by Regent Malhotra, and that search continues to be ongoing. It is on track. They have a number of candidates that committee is weeding their way through. And I'd like to give a shout out to Bernetta, who I believe serves on that search committee. So they're doing a great job there, and that work is ongoing. And hopefully we'll have another update on that in a few months from now as well. And then on an unrelated note, these last 2 bullet points were more just notes to myself because I wanted to make sure I hit on them. Was I have a meeting this week with Yvonne and Arsalan, so looking forward to that, and working with both of you. As a little side project that I've been working on unofficially has been, I've met with Patrick Hogan and MJ Bishop talking about student textbooks and textbook affordability. And MJ and the Kerwin Center, they do a lot in open educational resources, or OERs. And one thing I've done in coordination with them, and I've also spoken with a few members of my local Eastern Shore delegation, is I'd like to revive a bill from last year that would allow for textbooks to be added to the Maryland Back to School Tax-Free Week, which is that week in August where we, where we get to have our back to school shopping that's tax-free. Right now, textbooks are not included in that. And there's been a bill introduced before that would push to change that. I'm trying to revive that bill this year to see if we can, push that through. And luckily, in speaking with MJ, it would work in conjunction with the efforts of the Kerwin Center, so it wouldn't be undermining anything they're doing. And it really is something that is close to my heart, just because I realize that our students, all of us, we are negatively impacted by this pandemic. And if that cost savings, fee reduction can't come from the system, which it most likely will not, I'm hoping that at least this can provide a little bit semblance of financial relief, so at least we wouldn't have to be paying sales tax on books that can be hundreds of dollars at times. And so I can't make any promises, but I want you to know it's an issue close to my heart. It's on my radar, and I'm continuing to work with a few individuals there. And when I meet with Yvonne and Arsalan later this week, I'll be speaking about ways in which we could potentially have a letter of support, just drafting that the council could then look at to decide if you want to jump on board and just provide general support for the cause. And I've also spoken with Kyle, who leads the MHEC Advisory Council, who I know we'll be hearing from later as well. So I really would like this to be a team effort, as it directly affects every one of us here and all those who we represent. And then lastly, we have our wonderful USM SC committees that are now stood up, and great work with that, Annie. I know that was no small feat, and I know the work is ongoing. And I just wanted to say that I'm happy to serve here as an ex officio member of your student council, and I appreciate the invitation to all of your meetings. I'd be happy to communicate with any of you that are committee chairs or co-chairs as you would like me to. I don't want to invite myself or interject where I'm not invited or wanted, but I know that I'm here to listen, and I'm here to work with you. So any way that I can partner with you, please feel free to shoot me an email. And I really appreciate the teamwork and collaboration that we all have here. And thank you. That concludes my report, and I hope I didn't talk for too long.
Thank you, Nate. And definitely keep us posted as you work on your textbook project. Next, our USM advisors. This is also where we will talk about this is another attachment from last night's email. So last night's email had 8 attachments, just so y'all know, but they go in the order of the agenda, and hopefully it helps you all. But I can also bring this up too to be helpful. But we'll be talking about the student regent interview process as well. So I'll hand it over to Joe and Zakia.
Okay, I don't think Zakia has joined us yet. Have you, Zakia? Okay, let me just mention a couple of things. Hopefully, Zakia will be able to join us soon. One of the things I wanted to let you all know is I'm working back channels right now to try and get the right contact into the Biden transition team, so that some of the concerns that are being raised about actions that have been taken recently by the administration, that the concerns of the student body could in fact be presented to the transition team as well. So as soon as I have that contact, it takes a while to figure out exactly the right person to get in touch with, but I'm working on that one. We are going to talk about the regent selection process in just a few minutes. The other thing that Zakia wanted to make sure that we let you all know about, the chat with the chancellor. The last one last month went really well. The chancellor was extremely pleased with it. As most of you know, these are, he would much rather be doing this in person, let me tell you. He's just that kind of person. But He's dealing with the Zoom pretty well. These are non-scripted, non-agenda meetings. He just really wants to hear from the students. And we are working with all the vice presidents for student affairs and the student leaders. Next Sunday, we're having one, and he has asked to talk to international students so that he can just hear their opinions, their ideas, some of their concerns. And I will remind you, and he talks to the presidents about this on a regular basis too. This is not, in fact, just a moan and groan session, nor is it an opportunity for students to say, well, this isn't happening on my campus. Why can't you talk to my president about that? He really wants to dig down and hear the personal stories and interactions, so that, in fact, if there are ways that he can help move the system one way or another, that he, in fact, can. So next week is international students. The other thing that I would just remind you of and say that we are all frustrated by the incredible increase in COVID cases in the state of Maryland. We believe that our campuses are making prudent choices based on the data on their campuses. But as you know, Frostburg and UMCP have now made the pivot to online for the rest of the semester. That does a couple of things. Everybody except one was planning to go online after Thanksgiving anyway. But to say, all right, at 1 o'clock today, we're going online, and then we expect students to leave. This is allowing a much more orderly departure from the campuses at the students' convenience, not so much of campus convenience. Many of the campuses are offering testing on the way out, so that students can go home with a known negative test, which we think is a good idea. And so we are still doing our best to provide the most robust learning experience that we can for the students. But in fact, we also need to be prudent about managing COVID on our campuses. We will end the semester with every one of our campuses having a lower positivity rate than the communities in which they reside, which we consider a victory, as frustrating as that victory is. And we will be working very carefully about how we are going to plan for the spring semester. But as you know, things are changing very rapidly. So we will keep everybody in the loop on what's happening there. The one other thing that I would say from my own involvement and I'm kind of in the middle of all of the testing, the data around testing, and also vaccine distribution. We do have a very intensive group that is starting to plan for vaccine distribution once vaccines are available. And I will just let you know that I will be turning to student leadership. Vaccination with a safe vaccine is going to be extremely important to the population at large. And I am sincerely hoping that student leaders can, in fact, we can share the facts about vaccine and what vaccines can and will do once they are approved. And we are certainly hopeful that the USM can take a leadership role in getting the general population vaccinated, because it will be one of the major ways, besides continuing to wear your masks when you're inside and washing your hands and remaining physically distanced. But I will be turning to you all to help me as much as you can once vaccine does become available in the next several months. Now, besides that, I think the student regent issues were the other big thing, Annie, that Zakia, and we were going to turn it back to you to include that in your regular agenda, however you wanted to.
Okay, thank you all so much. What I might do, because I realize we're running a little bit late, which is a first for us, but I think is a sign of how active all of our directors have been and everybody has been in the last month. So if it's okay, I might so that we don't overkeep our guests who are coming just to talk with us, I might do a little bit of changing of the schedule a little bit, and we'll do the student regent conversation, and that way Zakia can be included too. And just have Dan Alpert, if you're around, I wanted to give you a couple minutes to give a plug for your committee because it's not related to a director. I do have a little slide for you. So if you're around, just holler and I'll get this up for you.
I'm here.
Cool. All right. It's all you.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Annie. So I'm going to be chairing the student fee committee this year. So background on me, so I'm president at College Park right now, but I've been doing student fees since my freshman year. Started doing student fees with our own student affairs committee in our SGA freshman year. Second semester, my position solely focused around student fees. And last year, even when I was a different position, I was also working on student fees. And so what I see as the purpose of the committee is to be advising the fee process, but I also want us to share information more about our current challenges at our individual institutions. And so I would like one person from each school at least on this committee, because I think it's something that relates to all of us rather than just like people that are interested. And I also would like someone who has knowledge about your fee process. Not in a mean way, but I don't want us to start at ground zero. I would really like someone who is either involved as your treasurer or someone else who understands your fee process a bit to be part of this. So that way we can have a really great collaborative and growth space for this. So that's number one. The other thing I want to say is, Nate, I want to respectfully disagree with you. I think that as USMSC, it is perfectly okay if we go against USM and something they agree upon. I think if not, there's no purpose for us to meet really, except for information sharing. And I've been involved with student fees, like I said, since my freshman year. And so when we do talk about student fees, some of the things that are mentioned are related to tuition, and student fees at a lot of our institutions are growing at a much more faster rate than they should be, and are pushing, especially at College Park, to $2,000 and other institutions alike. And so it's really a unique opportunity for students to be very much involved in the process and related to how much we pay for college. And I think student fees is the way that we have the most flexibility with that. And so I'm excited to hear about the process at each of our individual institutions, and then work together as we look at the student fee process and just student fees in general on a system level.
And Dan, I just want to say I don't disagree with you that student fees are an issue. When I made my comment about opposition, I was specifically referring to legislative positions, and that's where I'm concerned of the PR optics of taking a position on the legislative bill that could be at odds with the official USM position. That's what I would encourage the council to avoid. But as far as other issues, I completely understand, and I don't think we disagree there. And student fees are most definitely, a concern that we all feel the effects of.
Of course, but if even on a legislative level, I think that's our job as USMSC to represent the students. And I think it's also our Regents' job to represent the students as well. And I think that it's important that even if it is something that USM doesn't necessarily agree upon, it's okay if we go against them. I've been on the side of like, we need to work with our administration and the policies since day one of my freshman year. I think a lot of students may disagree with me on that and the way that I approach things at our campus, because I like to work with our administration a lot more. But I think that if at the end of the day, we see something that's in the best interest of students and USM may not, it's okay if legislatively we still go against that as well. And I think that's the point of our student council here.
I understand that. I'm just cautious on these meetings because they are being live streamed and they are on YouTube and archived. And so I just, I would want to avoid any PR rift that could give that impression. But in general, I think it's great to have continued conversations offline. And I'm more than willing to do that, as I have done for the past about 6 months now so far. And so I'm absolutely ready and willing to continue that.
If I may add really quickly, just as government relations, if there is a disconnect, I just think that maybe bringing anything to committee, that way we can understand where USM, their feelings on it, and the council as well. So whatever that we have to maybe go through, and we don't agree, it needs to be worked out in committee. And I understand what both of you guys are saying as far as Nate, the PR aspect of things, and just understand that we're not separate from the USM. And I also understand, Dan, where we are students and we still need to voice our opinions, and that's what this council is for. But let's just understand that we have a committee where we can talk through all of that stuff before we put out anything, if that helps you guys.
Excellent. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. I think that that's
everyone. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we can hear you, Zakia. Hi.
Hi. Sorry, I can't. I'm en route, so I'm just listening in. And I do want to say, and I think excuse the background noise. I think what Yvonne is saying is critical. We at least want to make sure everyone's on the same page. When Joe and I met with the executive board this summer, we acknowledge that there may be times when there are some disagreements, and it's happened in the past. When you all are coming to some decisions, you'll want to, of course, vote and be democratic about it in your process. And what the system does not want is partly, I think, part of what Nate is saying is, surprises. Like, we don't want something to pop up that has not been thoroughly considered amongst you all, talked about with the advisors, and all of the work I think everybody is doing to have conversations in committee and have informed committee members and all of the things I'm hearing. All of that's great and will set us up for success. We just want to make sure everyone is on the same page. So Joe and I will be able to be clear, and Nate and Aaliyah also, with you about where the system stands on bills when they come up. And your co-directors of government affairs, government relations, which is why Yvonne's jumping in appropriately, will be connected to all of that too. So we need to keep the communication open so that everyone knows what's going on and be very fair about the process, but make sure it's clear and that we know what's happening.
Well said.
That's it. Going back on mute.
Well said, Zakia, and I agree. And I have been a part of USMSC for 3 years, and I can think readily of 2 examples where I, as a person, and I, as part of College Park, have differed from USM. And it's 100% possible to do so in a civil manner and in a way where you still love each other at the end of the day, but you just sometimes disagree. That's the beauty of democracy. It's actually encouraged. So I love everything that's being said. That's a great conversation that's happening. All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to click and hand this over to Beth and say, Beth has done an amazing job leading mental health thus far. So Beth, let us know, tell us what you've been up to.
Team. So I probably look a bit how I feel today. I had some lovely dental work yesterday, so I'm still kind of, recovering from that. So please bear with me. Thank you. I wanted to let you know how within the last week we've had the initial meeting for the mental health committee. The idea was that we would have at least 2 sessions to encourage as much student participation as possible with this committee, because mental health is kind of an undercurrent of all the issues that we discuss in one way or another. And we have gotten quite a bit of individual student interest. We didn't have so many students on our first call, but we do have a call again if you happen to be free and you happen to be interested at 5 p.m. today. So shortly after this call, if you'd like to be part of that, please feel free. So some of the emerging themes that we have already discussed is that there's sort of 2 tracks of thought here. There is more effectively connecting students with the resources that we have already and that already exist. Thinking in the next 6 to 12 weeks, considering a social media campaign to promote the use of counseling services. Joe had mentioned in our last meeting that some of our counseling services were being underutilized, even though they are being offered remotely, and recognizing that the holiday season might be a particularly acute period where students might feel a tension or in crisis, particularly as they sort of balance what is a very unusual holiday season and the end of classes and moving on and off campus. So we really want to make sure they know what's available to them, and that they can follow up from there. And then, so once we look at past what the next 6 to 12 weeks offers, we're thinking, okay, what are the resources that we really want to see? What do we want to advocate for? One of those discussions is about the expansion of telehealth and telecounseling opportunities. In March, I believe, of this year, the state government authorized the interstate compact, I believe, where we do recognize the psychology licensures of practitioners in states that border Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, etc. So if you are a student receiving care from a practitioner that's in one of those border states, you are in a pretty good position to get telehealth services. If you are a Medicare or Medicaid recipient, you are in a pretty good position to get telehealth services, but we might be interested in supporting and advocating for the expansion of that to address private insurance providers, and then also states that are outside of that range if possible. So we are in the process of meeting with other partners as well, to sort of address that, and meeting with UMCP, UMBC officers who work directly with counseling programs that can help inform, what should our objective really be, and what's the best way to approach that. So as we get more of that background and that scope built, you can expect that we'll reach out to, the Government Relations Committee, that, Nate, we might reach out to you as far as the Board of Regents goes, just really be on the same page with how we're approaching that. Another thing that we have discovered sort of in our sort of base research is that all of our campuses obviously offer different levels of counseling services, different levels of mental well-being and care services. For example, I'm representing UMGC, which does not have a centralized counseling facility, in part because of all those discrepancies with telemedicine and referrals, and it is just very different. But we do recognize that we can maybe offer more consistent self-help resources and referral resources, looking at websites like Frostburg and UMBC in particular. They offer really comprehensive readings, self-assessment, tools for anti-racism, tools for transgender and non-binary students, even special counseling groups for women of color and routine communities that they facilitate and build throughout the year. So, we could look at how can we replicate some of those offerings that are very successful at our other institutions across the board. And it might be as simple as connecting with people who can update the website at these relevant schools. So that's really what we're looking at. It's those two tracks. What are the resources we have, and how can we more effectively connect students? What are the resources we want to see, and how can we work together as USMC to advocate for those? So that is it for me for now.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Beth, and thanks for all your work. And the only thing I would add to that, which is kind of cool, is we were able to connect with the UMBC folks because I brought up your committee's work at the Board of Regents meeting on Friday, and one of the regents wrote me, Regent Atman, and he's like, contact Dr. Atman at this school. So it's kind of cool. I'm starting to see things emerge that way. All right. Well, I do apologize to Kyle, who is our guest. Kyle, I'm sorry that we're getting to you a little bit later than planned on the agenda, but we are so happy to have you. Kyle is the executive chair. Please correct me if I get your title wrong, Kyle, but I believe Kyle is the executive chair for the student advisory for the Maryland Higher Education Commission. And Kyle, with that, I would love to pass it to you. If there's anything you want me to share the screen, or if you want to share a screen, just let me know.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Annie. You got that right. I am the executive chair of our Student Advisory Council. Before I begin, I would just like to say a thank you to Annie, who coordinated this meeting with Dan Alpert. I am the College Park representative on the council, in addition to serving as the chair. So thank you, Dan, for putting us together and in touch. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think that we all do great work across the state as student leaders. And what I'm interested in sharing with you today is a little bit about the Maryland Higher Education Commission, how their role fits in with the USM, and then what we do as the Student Advisory Council to the Maryland Higher Education Commission. So the big thing that I always tell people when I say that I work for MHEC is, the first question I usually get is, oh, well, what institution within Maryland is that? And I have to immediately correct them that it's not an institution. It's a major regulatory agency in the state, and they have some very important roles that exist. So just as a little bit of background information to make sure that everyone's up to speed before we have a little discussion on it, the number one thing that MHEC does is we advise the governor and the General Assembly on statewide education policy. So this is a really important contingency for what we do in the state for education. So not only do we advise the General Assembly and the governor, but we also conduct statewide planning for education. So all of the educational planning that exists, it comes through MHEC, and we work with our institutional partners to create, statewide plans that are implemented on all of our different campuses. So those institutional partners are you guys. So the USM is one of our institutional partners. We also have partners with our community colleges, St. Mary's College of Maryland, Morgan State. And the other thing that we do that's kind of unique is we work with a lot of trade schools. We work with out-of-state colleges and universities, private career schools. We also work with registered colleges and universities and non-public colleges and universities. So we have a very broad and wide-ranging approach to educational issues in the state. I like to say that it's deeper, broader, and more complex. We deal with a lot of different student issues, not just issues within, the USM schools or so forth. So the major way that MHEC is set up is we operate off these 5-year planning cycles. So in the planning cycle that we had most recently, which I believe Annie attached to our email, was from 2017 to 2021. So it runs through the end of this fiscal year. And the way that we set these up is we usually look at 3 domains that we write our strategies for. So there's 11 total strategies that we use. They each fall under one of the 3 domains, and those are access, success, and innovation. So whenever we talk in our meetings, the lenses we use is how are students' access to education affected in the state? How does that work from a K through 12 perspective and how they're prepared? How are they financially literate to access their education? How do we work to make sure that students have the access from a technology perspective or a transportation perspective to make it to campus and do these different things? The other thing that we look at is success. What are our success outcomes? How are those outcomes equitable? How do we have diversity, inclusion, and equity expressed within our policies so that students, whether they're at a community college level, whether at a trade school, whether they're at a 4-year institution, they have a successful endeavor and they're able to contribute to a growing workforce in Maryland. And then the second strategy that we really look at, or the second topic we really look at in our state planning, is innovation. How can we promote innovation and a culture of risk-taking on campuses? How can we, expand teaching opportunities for professors or expand research and undergraduate instruction for students? So we use these different strategies in order to inform our decision-making. And we use these different strategies when we write our iterations of our 5-year plan. So one thing that's very exciting is that the 5-year plan is ending at the end of this academic year. So we are concluding our 5-year plan. And right now over the summer, went through, I'd like to say, a 2-month-long writing work group. So we had about 140 stakeholders come to us, have discussions about what our next iteration of the state plan would look like. We had major writing work groups sit down for about 2.5 months and write a draft of what we would like to see the next state plan be. And that's currently in the works right now. So that's a little bit about MHEC. That's what we do from the commission perspective. Now I would like to transition just really briefly into what the Student Advisory Council does. And I am the chair of that council. So the Student Advisory Council, it exists to inform and advise the commission on student issues, on student policies, and on future issues that can exist within the state. We are a very diverse group of students, so it's comprised of all of our USM institutions. We ask them to send forward representatives. Our other institutional partners are community colleges. We have them send forth representatives. And what we do is we sit down and we discuss these issues. In the past, it's been a very unique opportunity for us because we would work within that state plan. So for 2019, our major goals within the state plan were these strategies 11, 9, and 3. We would work within those strategies to provide recommendations on how the state can change moving forward, issues that students are having within their respective institutions, and vice versa. What's unique about this strategy this next iteration of the state plan that we're working with is that we don't actually have a state plan set up yet. So a lot of what we're doing now is looking down the barrel and looking ahead to say, oh, right, if these are the issues that we've been facing the last few years, what was successful in the last iteration of the state plan? What would we like to continue moving forward? How have we addressed these issues moving forward? And how do we respond to a very changing society within Maryland, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic and some different issues that exist? So with that in mind, one thing that I've become very interested in being chair this year, I've worked for the Student Advisory Council for 3 years. I've represented my community college, Frederick Community College. When I transferred to University of Maryland, I was called to be the representative for College Park, and this is my second year in that role. One thing that I'm very interested in is diversifying the interests of the Student Advisory Council across the state. Historically, we have not seen a tremendous involvement of USM schools. There's some that stand out, and this is during my time there, perhaps, earlier on, it was different. Towson has been a very involved school. University of Baltimore, they've traditionally brought forth representatives. College Park has not been, so it's something that I've tried to change since being there. And I think I see a real opportunity with the Student Advisory Council to work a little bit more closely with the USM SC. Because we want to hear your student voice and have that be more pronounced on our council. Some of the issues that we work on in our meetings this year, we've had 2 meetings that have been agenda-based, and we've had 2 that have been more in-house organization that we've had to build. Has been everything from research opportunities and expanding those within the COVID-19 pandemic. One thing that we've made a recommendation towards the commission to create is a scholarship fund for independent research. So students that were displaced from COVID-19 or not having the opportunity to perform their research on their campuses, they would receive a small scholarship allotment to conduct their own research under the guise of a professor. It's one thing that we are putting in our recommendations for the end of the year that will go to the commission, and I think it's something that addresses the innovation component and some of the strategies that the commission has outlined. Other things that we've worked on is technology access. Again, we look at these issues of access, success, and innovation. And technology access is something that we've noticed that a lot of students are having issues with, whether that's not being able to connect to broadband internet, whether it's not having the physical hardware to make sure that they can have access to their education. So we've looked at creating a technology grant that can be applied into, and this is another thing that we are recommending to the commission. Before I get ahead of myself, I would just like to describe really briefly what those recommendations look like. So like I said earlier, we exist as an advisory council to advise the state and advise their education policy through the commission. And we do this through two main ways. We provide knowledge-based recommendations and we provide action-based recommendations. So if I see a problem within the state of having access to technology, I can provide an action-based recommendation that we need to establish a grant fund to allow students to apply into it to receive the technology that they need. Or what we can do is we can have a knowledge-based recommendation. This is something we did at a very recent meeting of ours with providing our faculty advisory council, because there's several councils within MHEC, and providing them a knowledge-based recommendation on how students respond to online learning in the COVID-19 Zoom university setting. It's a very different environment for a lot of professors. It's a very different environment for a lot of students. So we provide both forms of recommendation for the state. So with that in mind, we're really looking towards the next iteration of our 5-year plan in January when the legislative session opens. I believe we will receive our draft, and that's where I would really like to extend an olive branch to the USM so we can forge a better partnership. I think that when we have opportunities to make change happen and we are given opportunities to really express the student voice, I really like to make sure that those conversations are wide and facilitated to broader audiences. I think that we get really great communication and participation from our community colleges because usually we don't have mechanisms like the USMSC at community college. But at the 4-year level, that's something that I'm very interested in fostering. I know that Annie and I have spoken about that. And that's a little bit of background on us. So for the sake of our discussion, I would really like to open it up to you all. If you have some questions or some ideas for better involvement, I would love to take some time answering those. And if nothing else, maybe we can get to know each other a little bit better with what our core issues are and how we can move forward in the future.
Thank you so much, Kyle. All right, everybody. What do you want MHEC to think about? What do you want Kyle to think about? What do you want to share?
I'm curious, Annie, just because I know we have the Student Advisory Council that Kyle leads has representatives from each of the institutions, just like our Student Council does. And so, you know, I think it's great. I know you work with the Faculty Council and now, you know, liaising with Kyle as well. I think it's important for all of the SGA presidents to know that, you know, on your campus, you also have, you know, a member of the committee that Kyle leads as well. So really there's a lot of opportunity for this to be an ongoing conversation. I know MHEC does a lot with scholarships and funding for that. And I know that's something that, you know, Kyle, in our conversation, you had stressed as well. So I don't know if there's anything to that effect that you wanted to speak to, but I know that was definitely a takeaway that I had from our conversation. And it was great to know that that's a focus of yours.
Yes. So one thing that we actively deal with is MHEC is responsible for allotting anywhere over. I believe that the number changes from a year-to-year basis because the governor decides the final say with how much money is allowed. It's easily over $100 million in scholarship money every year. Now, these scholarships come for different groups. So depending on whether you're a need-based, whether you're using a delegate or a senatorial scholarship, our statewide funding is for student scholarships, it's pretty diverse. And one thing that we are very interested in is having a wider understanding of those things for our students on campus. Unfortunately, some of our scholarships are not well advertised, they're not well known, and therefore they're not well applied into. And I think that this is a real tragedy. I remember being in one meeting in College Park where there were several students talking about their access to their education, and they flat out said, yes, I will be graduating with 500 grand worth of debt for my undergraduate because I cannot find scholarship opportunities. And these are students within Maryland who are need-based, who don't have that awareness. And I think that one of the major caveats to that lack of awareness is, you know, us making sure that we do our job on the back end and providing that information and having that flow. I always talk with our representatives that are sent over about a unidirectional flow of information. We supply information to the commission to make better decisions, and then the commission brings things to our awareness that we can supply back to our respective institutions. I see in the chat somebody was talking about these scholarships. Yes, so these scholarships are publicly available. If you go on the MHEC website, you will have a list of all the different scholarships, some of their criteria. Some of the scholarships that we offer are for specific fields and specific industries. Others are a little bit more generic. One thing that we also do is we offer scholarships to both documented and undocumented students, and we offer financial aid to documented and undocumented students. So you do not have to be in a specific field or in a specific group to qualify for these financial opportunities. One thing that we also do a lot of work with is making sure that we have programmatic language that encourages competitiveness across our institutions. So we make sure that if you're a student from Towson or you're a student from McDaniel, you're not overly emphasized versus somebody else. And that's one of the roles that the commission has as well. So when we look at educational policy across the state, one thing that the commission does that we help advise on is determining competitiveness between college programs. I know that this was something that was brought up in our last commission meeting for our board. The University of Maryland College Park was trying to create a doctorate of public health program that was conflicting with a program that was already in creation at one of our historically Black colleges and universities. So that was a thing that was hashed out there and we made a decision on. So those type of policy things, we have a small say in it, but we also deal with that financial aid component as well.
Annie, may I add something really quickly? Hi, Cal. Thank you for your presentation. I do encourage everyone from every institution on our council to connect with the members of the MHEC that represent their school. I do, like you said, University of Baltimore is very involved with MHEC and making sure they have the representation. But when you streamline, as a previous student government president of our university, when you streamline with them, you kind of, like you said, just how we're doing today, just connecting, and a lot of great things come out of it. I know our law students are very involved with MHEC.
Yes, they are actually. Both of the students that are involved, one of them worked on a tax bit of legislation advising the commission to release some of the tax money that's put on student education fees and tuition. That's one thing that she was very passionate about. And then one of our other students from University of Baltimore is actually a doctoral student who works in healthcare policy. So I thank you for sending them along. They do great work for us. And one thing that I would like to throw to the group that maybe someone can answer is some potential ability to have better overlap. So one thing that I'm very interested in is in the next 2 months, we are going to receive our draft of the next 5-year plan. And one thing I would be very interested is to have you guys have a review, even here. I know that you said that you send members forward, but not all the time do we have full participation from those members. I've noticed that it's especially prevalent from our 4-year schools. I'd probably only say that 4 or 5 of our USM institutions represent themselves regularly. And I think that that's a huge shame because at the end of the day, we want to hear your student voices as well. So I haven't the opportunity. Yes, so the 4-year plan, it exists. So Annie, this was just a comment that was in the chat. So Annie sent that out. If you all have any questions on that 4-year plan, you may send it to me. The one caveat that I will say is that was the old state plan that we're working on. And we are actively taking recommendations for the new state plan. So if there's something that we have found, some language that we would like to change or work on, we bring those up in our meetings as well. And yes, I can leave my email in the chat.
Hi, everybody. This is Bernetta. Just real quick, I would like to see if there's a way that we could keep you in touch with Annie and the exec team and/or our committees so that as students, as you're proposing things on behalf of students, right, we're all in the loop and in the know, and we can work more collaboratively together.
Yeah, Kyle, you want to be a part of our meetings?
I would love to be a part of
Okay, done.
That was easy. Thank you, Bernetta. Very streamlined.
all live stream. Did you want to come? Put you on the spot. No, we would love to have you, Kyle, and keep it going. And I do have a quick question for you, Kyle, that's more making sure that the schools do have overlap and that everyone's good. Like for folks, just so you know, like several USMSC members like Nela Benet, like Wangui, Matt Rose, who you all remember probably from running for vice president, are all on this student advisory committee. But is the member list up to date? Because it does look like some of our schools are missing folks. And if so, this might be a good place to plug for, like, it looks like Eastern Shore doesn't have anyone. Is that the case?
Yes, so I actually have that pulled up over here. So it looks to me that there are several of our colleges that are missing participation. What I can also do is follow up and make sure that this is the most up-to-date information I have, and I can email you. But yes, several of our schools do not have active participation. This is a problem that we also have with our private schools. And I think that it really goes back to a lack of awareness of what MHEC does. We are so responsible for providing so much scholarship opportunities to students across the state, and we deal so much with the policy that comes out of the legislative session that we review and make comments on. And I think that having those voices heard is really important. So I would definitely appreciate if you could return to your institutions and confirm that you have a student sitting on our group. That would be something that we would really appreciate.
Thank you. And Kyle and I had a really awesome conversation because both of us were and care a lot about transfer students. So this is also a great resource and place for supporting transfer students across the system, which is a pretty big. Kyle, what was the population again? Like how many transfer students? And
I think it's something to the effect of 2/3 of our transfer students are in the USM are transfer students. And unfortunately, some of our transfer policy, it's come a long way. I think that there's a lot of holes and gaps that exist as well. And just in regard to that, I think that that's one issue that I'm also very passionate about within the USM. 2/3 of our USM students are transfer students, and on the whole, it's not a very easy process to negotiate. I think institutionally, there's also some existing bias that exists towards transfer students. I have had issues getting accepted into programs and being considered just because I've come from other schools. And even though I'm perfectly qualified for positions, it's not built into their language. I know that I had one student talking to me that had done several different research opportunities on campus, and they had transferred to UMD College Park, and they were not considered for any research because they had never accepted transfer students within those programs. It's not something they traditionally did. So I think even expressing some of those concerns would be something that would be very beneficial to us. And again, I really thank you all for your opportunity and for the floor and the ability to share a little bit about what we do.
Thank you, Kyle. And we'll be seeing more of you. Thank you, Brunetta. So welcome, and we're so glad to have you. And thanks to all of you here who serve on both, because that's a tall order as well. Awesome. So I was gonna see if Zakia, are you here? It's okay if not. I was just gonna see if we should do the questions real quick, or not real quick, but just do the questions. It's okay if not. If not, we'll do our bio break. Okay, we'll do a bio break. Oh, okay, sounds good. So everybody, I know that we're all human and we need a bio break sometimes. So we'll see you all back here at 1 p.m. We'll do student regent questions and talk about the executive order statement. Enjoy this 50 minutes. See you back at 1. All right, welcome back, everybody. Please feel free to, eat lunch as always, too. As this is going on, I realize our meeting goes directly over lunchtime, so eat away. um, I did bring up a share screen for folks to ponder here as we wait for everybody to come back. I'll just keep this up here for another minute or so. As always, thanks to all of you for responding to helping us know how we should be setting our agenda and what we should be keeping in mind for our breakout sessions as well as open forum. We will be doing those two other items first, but I just wanted to show people, get your brains a working about what you might be wanting to bring up in breakout and in open forum. In addition to what you see here, I just want to put some of the contextual comments that people left that explain some of these. So number one is COVID-19 related issues. And this has been one of the top ones every single time we've met. However, people left really important comments saying, it's a little bit of a different discussion now. We really need to be talking about the spring and thinking about the spring and the continued impacts, as well as what does it really mean given the surges in Maryland as a state and the United States as a country right now. So a lot of comments were put in this section about spring and about COVID and why COVID is the number one issue. Diversity and inclusion comments included things along the lines of this really needs to be a topic. I feel like we're going to be talking heavily about DEI here as we engage on the executive order. The executive order, again, is linked in that email that we sent last night as a quick reference. So you can see the executive order itself, as well as SUNY and Department of Labor information to help contextualize all that. But that executive order is the crossover between student affairs, government relations, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we will be talking heavily about that. But the comments about diversity and inclusion were very much about the impacts of the election, of why people put that up there. Mental health is number 3, but we had people comment and say that kind of like what Beth was mentioning earlier, the mental health ties into almost every other topic as well. So mental health remains towards the top, and then student essential needs and affordability, which again, a lot of those interrelate to. And I think understandably, we've worked so hard on civic engagement. People were so excited on Friday about all the civic engagement. I think we can now take a breather on civic engagement. So I think that's why we're seeing it fall, because there's been a lot of civic engagement, which is great, right? But yeah, sometimes this is a great example of how you align your priorities with the timeliness of them, et cetera. So I really applaud everyone for getting those up, and think about those, because those will be what you talk about at breakout and in open forum. So without further ado, we will go back to the agenda, and we will actually start with a review of the student regent process, and specifically the interview questions. So one of the fun and very cool things we get to do every year at USMSC is we get to interview all the nominees for the student regent position. So a year ago we talked to Nate, and we talked to Nate, we talked to Aaliyah, and the year prior to that, we talked to Drew, and the year, so you can kind of get it. So we do meet the student regent before the student regent is selected. We do not select the student regent. We do not. We interview the nominees from the universities, and we provide feedback, and we provide like our top picks, if you will, but we do not pick the regent. However, the process that we have is still very, very important and essential. And so what we're going to do here together, depending on what's easiest for you, I will share my screen again. But on that email last night, one of those 8 attachments is the list of questions for the student regent. So as I work to pull those questions up, I would invite you, Nate, to say a little bit about your thoughts on the questions as someone who had to answer them.
Sure, thank you. And I'm pulling up the questions again now as well. I think the questions, I think they're great. It definitely covers I think many different topics you'd want to address. I understand you're probably going to have quite a few candidates because each institution can submit up to 2 people, and so that's a great number of potential interviews you could be having. So I understand you probably want to keep the interviews relatively brief, which is why it's only 6 questions here. The only thing I would add maybe to question number 4, as you're asking about prioritizing undergraduate and graduate constituencies and that representation, we might want to also broaden that to encompass being representative of not just your home institution, but of the whole system. So like I come from Salisbury, but in my role as student regent, acting as a regent on the board, I'm not there to represent Salisbury. I'm there to represent all 172,000 students across our 12 institutions. And so, although I love Salisbury and I'm proud to be a Seagull, I'm here to represent everybody. And I think that really is an important aspect to, you can certainly have your home turf pride of wherever you come from, whether you're a Terrapin or a Seagull or a Hawk or what have you. But, we want to make sure that any potential candidate for regent is certainly representative of the whole system.
Thank you so much, Nate. That's super helpful. So everybody, you have it shared on my screen, hopefully, so you can see it if that's easiest for you, or if you're on a different device and calling in today, hopefully you can see it on your own device, referencing the email from yesterday. So I'll just really quickly, we'll go one by one. Nate brought up a really good point. We're trying to make the most out of what has to be, unfortunately, once you allocate it out, pretty short interviews. So we want high impact, right? We want these to be really good questions. We don't necessarily, and this was my mistake yesterday, we don't want to add to these. We just want to modify them. So I'm sorry that I made that an option last night. My apologies. So the first question that we have to look at is, the typical, tell us about yourself, what makes you unique, what makes you qualified, and why do you want to be here? There's a lot in that question, right? So that's question 1. Does anybody have, are we good with that? Yeah? Y'all like that? Okay, what I'm gonna count on here is I'm gonna go through these and y'all be like, stop. if you want to change something. And I will not be heard at all. It's just hard for me to read the chat and read this. So unmute yourself and say something. Okay. This question I think has been around a while, but has changed in format a little bit each year. One is, how would you hold your own in the Board of Regents meeting environment? And really hoping that students get at the fact that they're going to be the only voting student in the room, and how they're going to hold their own. So if anybody has any modifications to that question, you can think about it too. And as I read them, you later bring up an earlier one. The third question we have is, the position of student regent involves a significant amount of time. Boy, oh boy, yes, it does. Both in virtual and in-person environments. So this one is about time commitment and sacrifice. Tell us what things in your life are a must do and what commitments you're willing to give up for 2 years. So this is different because now student regents have to commit for 2 whole years. So again, that one has changed because of the recent changes in the format. If anyone has any thoughts or changes. Then our next question that we usually pose to the regents is, how would you ensure that you prioritize voting based on preferences of your undergraduate and graduate student constituents? As Nate brought up, we're talking about over 172,000 people. So when we ask this question to the regent, we're hoping they're going to speak to how they will communicate, how people will know who they are, how will they be doing outreach? Are they going to be engaged and present? Example, these meetings to get to meet everybody. And you've noted, like Nate and Aaliyah always give like their phone number, they give their email, they say, please contact us. We will be on your committees, right? So we want folks that proactively seek to be engaged and to know their constituents, because it's not enough to just go with your own personal experience as wherever you may be from and think that your experience can be scaled up to everybody's experience of 172,000 plus people. So that is our fourth question that we have here. Question 5 is describing one decision you have made that was difficult or challenging. What factors guided your initial decision making? How was it resolved? And what would you have done differently, if anything? This is one where folks, if you have something you'd like to modify with this, feel free. I feel like last year, and those who were around last year, you can say, I think we got a pretty wide spectrum of what people thought that example could be. So we had really teeny tiny difficult decisions, which nothing to them. That's all, the question doesn't say it. And then we had some folks that answered and it was like this big giant decision, which was kind of more what we were going for, right? But some folks were like, well, I'm in this one student org and we had trouble doing this one event and we weren't quite going for that, but that really wasn't on them. So that's one we might want to look at. And then sixth, we had, how would you propose new ideas to the board and to give an example of an idea or issue you have. All right, so I'm going to open it up now, and now I can look at chat again if folks have written me things, but anything you all would like to see changed? Are you happy with the questions as they are?
Annie, I think you might also want to incorporate, I'm not sure which number this would go under, but working as a team is also very important with the revised structure. So, I work alongside Aaliyah and, we're texting or emailing back and forth. And so I think next year, whoever is taking, as Aaliyah becomes the voting student region, and then whoever takes really her seat as she assumes essentially what's mine right now, having them work together as a team will also be important, just as her and I work together as a team. It's not just a one-person show. It really is a collaboration where, in addition to representing our whole USM student population, you might also have differing opinions with the other student region. And it's a matter of, even though there is only one voting student region, it helps if you're both on the same page and not opposed. And so fortunately, Aaliyah and I have been able to have a wonderful, partnership in teamwork there. And so hopefully that can continue as well.
Very good point, Nate. I think I'm still sharing my screen. It's a good point. I'm just trying to look at which question that might go with. And if folks have thoughts while I'm looking, go for it.
It could be number 2, I guess, kind of holding your own while also working with the other student region.
I like that. I like that a lot. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Could you type that in the chat so I can copy and paste?
Will do.
Thank you, because I realized I don't have the editable one up, but if you chat it, I will be able to keep it. I will be able to work. Very good point.
So Annie, do you want to read the comments in the chat, or do you want representatives to read their own?
Oh, yeah.
Read them, or however you want to do it.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, let me get down here.
I just dropped one in the chat, Annie. I can chime in. Yeah, so one of the questions that you mentioned that we might need to revisit was number 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that if you want to tease out those larger decisions, you could rephrase it to say, to emphasize that it's a major decision or a decision that would have impact on your future. Have you made a decision that impacts not only your future, but those of others as well? I mean that, even the decision to pursue higher education and go on to graduate school or something like that, that's also that an example of that kind of decision. Also, it can be connected to number 5, but if we wanted to tease out something about their experience in collaborative decision making or working in a team, that doesn't have a right or wrong answer. But what I personally listen for is this person instinctively saying, oh, they've done good work for me, or we've done good work together? And how they associate their relationship to others. If I'm hearing a person that's persistently sort of positioning themselves as a singularity against the others, then that tells me they're going to work in a much different way than somebody who, recognizes the unique voices and contributions of everybody in that room.
Thank you for that, Beth. And now I have my notes up, so I'm taking notes, and I was able to easily copy paste the stuff in the chat. So thank you, everybody.
And to Beth's point, where I was looking at number 5 with something similar in mind, where you were looking to fine tune that question. So we want decisions made that sort of affect a larger group or body of people, right? I think you were mentioning that in some of the interviews you did before, there was different types of experience levels and what you were aiming for. So maybe we're modifying that to talk about the experience and the impact and how, how it impacted maybe a larger group versus some of the smaller decisions that we heard in some of the previous interviews. So thinking about how we could reword that to capture that.
Good point.
Hi, Annie, this is Ashley. I put one in the chat. I was just saying like what you said, like how you worded, like saying if you're the only, or as the only student voting member on the Board of Regents, how would you hold your own in that space?
Yeah.
Like kind of like reiterate that
Yeah.
they're the only student member.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. We could, yeah. And that way we could say, you know, yeah. Mm-hmm. Excellent. And then the other question I forgot to ask before was, do you all think we do anticipate kind of a pattern that we've seen all year, which is with things being virtual, we see higher levels of engagement and where we're used to having one person run for VP or one person run for president, all of a sudden it was 3 and then it was 19, et cetera, et cetera. This role has, it will cap. Like you can only send 2 per an institution. However, we do want to make sure, because it could, you all saw, it can go a while because you all are super thoughtful, wonderful people. Is there anything here you think could be collapsed or is less necessary that you think could go away off of this list?
Annie, can I ask you a question just with how you're going to conduct the interviews? I know for those of you that have a vote on this matter next month, I know in the past, it's always helped me with other things to see people's resumes. And I know this is completely your guys' decision, but I don't know, Annie, do you plan to circulate those resumes to the voting members of this committee? So that way they can assess the candidates aside from the interview itself?
Yes. And I can't even take the credit for it. That is one of the things that Zakia has done every year. So I'm sure.
And I came off of mute to talk about it.
Cool.
Yes. Yeah, Annie is right, and great question, Nate. Yes, everyone, at least for the years that I've been involved, has seen the candidates' profile packets before, within the week, within a few days, I should say, of the interview. So the nominations are due on November 30th. I will turn them around as quickly as possible. It may take me a day or two, but then the entire council, ex officio and all, will have them ahead of time. And there are a few key questions on the document, and you'll remember, Nate, that you do have to answer some questions and give some information and insight. So that may help with some thinking as far as questions that may need to be tailored or adjusted. Maybe we'll give you all an opportunity to say, you know, in advance, can we ask this person about X, Y, and Z if it's something specific that can't be fit into one of the questions that we're hashing out right now. So yes, you'll get them at least by the Wednesday or Thursday before the interview. I also want to say in response to something that was said earlier, it will be great if we have a ton of these. I don't think that's going to happen, y'all. Yes, we have a listen to nominate 2 per, but the thing that is hard for a lot of students is 2-year commitment. So this year may be better than last year as far as numbers are concerned. But it may have been 5 or 6 last year, and it was fine. We got 2 awesome quality Regents. So I'm not worried about there being, you know, if we get 5 or 6, I think we'll still be in good shape. But I've told Annie that it is a flurry. We need to but
Z, you're breaking up.
That's enough. Yes, you get the resumes. I'll let you more later.
Thanks, Zakia, and thanks, Joe, because I can't tell sometimes if it's my internet or the other folks, so I don't interrupt. Thank you. Because before I couldn't hear Kyle, it was fine for everybody else. So thanks, everybody.
Annie, and this may be for Zakia, but I'm curious, when students are nominated, is there a justification of some kind that the institution also provides, like why they chose those students out of all the other students that would benefit us?
So Zakia, if I get this wrong, I'm so sorry. But from my memory, we had multiple recommendation letters that were given. And I think one was from the president. I don't know if it's always from the president. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there you go. A letter comes from the president to support. Okay, my memory's not too bad. All right. So your president has to recommend you, and that is kind of the justification from the school. Yeah. And I see your stuff, Ashley, Laura, and Beth, and I agree. So if others agree with this, the question that maybe if things are getting tight on time that we could leave out or make secondary is the question number 3 for those who are unable to see the chat. So the question where we're really asking about time commitments and so forth, I agree with what you all are suggesting as well. And I'm glad you mentioned it because I've noticed, and others who've been around, so I'm looking around. I know Niv was around last year and Yvonne was around last year, but everybody's busy. So everybody who's involved with this kind of stuff is busy. And that's how they have the experiences that help make them qualified to even do this. So I agree with that thought and trusting people who are applying for this position to have time management skills. But if you do get worried while listening, feel free to ask.
And to that, maybe you could ask something to the effect of, like, I know for me, what I've had to do is there have been many days that I've had to not go to a class or go to a different section of a lab. And so really, are you willing to be flexible with your academic schedule or other commitments? Really, maybe not give up, but, you know, remain flexible because, you know, there are many times that I'm missing a class to attend a meeting, whether it's a committee meeting, a board meeting, you know, some type of meeting. So really, it's important that, yes, academics are a priority, but when you're a regent, being a regent really needs to be the priority over your academics because you're not just serving yourself, you're serving thousands of students across the state.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Nate, the point that you bring up, because I find that it is easier for people to wrap their brains around more concrete examples. So when you can say this might require 4 or 5 meetings per month that are in excess of 2 hours each because you've got 30 people that are all on different schedules, the more specifics that can be provided. And I don't know how much of that might happen outside of this conversation because we know this isn't the only part of the interview process. So I trust that some of that is happening elsewhere, maybe even before they get to us. So just if there's any insight as to do we provide that kind of specific estimates so that people have something more effective to react to.
Hey, Annie, are we planning, maybe Niv could talk a little bit about the comms piece because we were going to roll out some comms and social media to make folks more aware of what this would entail.
Totally.
Yeah, so the video I'm creating, I've based it a lot on what's already given in the application and description. There might be a lot of specifics probably, which Nate could give insight into when he does his questions, but I've kept the overall video based on the introduction part about what the position, eligibility, all those things based very, very general based on what the application is. And I think the student regions can probably provide more insight into the specifics based on the questions I've asked of all of them. And obviously the video needs to be modified. I'm more than happy to modify it.
And as a follow-up, just so all of you know this, there have been a few individuals that have contacted me directly in some way, shape, or form about the position. And essentially, I know one of them came through our office, through Wilma, who's our executive assistant to the board. Others found other ways to contact me, you know, through finding my email. And anybody who's contacting me, I'm having that conversation with them about, you know, what the responsibilities entail and just kind of, and everybody, I tell them also that, you know, I don't have a say in this. It's your council at the interview if they get to this stage. And so, I'm just here to listen and to provide feedback where requested. But just so individuals are more than welcome to reach out to myself, and I assume Aaliyah would probably also be willing to chat with individuals as well, just to help them ascertain specifically what that commitment looks like and what it is as an experience, because it is one thing on paper, but when you're living it, it can always be a little bit different. And so we're happy to provide that feedback and is in an objective manner, as objective as we can possibly be, because we're not putting our thumb on the scale for any one person or institution. We're just here to provide our experience and help others share in that.
Hi, this is Ashley from UMGC. I just wanted to chime in on what Beth and Laura were saying. Like, I think it's important to not frame it, I guess, as like giving up things, because I think it could be received that, people that have like family commitments may not be appropriate for the role. Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, so I agree like with leaving that question out or just rewording it a little bit.
Thank you all. I took notes that I will send to Zakia based on all the feedback that you provided in the chat or said, and I was typing. So my guess is based on that feedback, we'll work with Zakia, like the executive team, and we'll work to reword some of these things and, even make them tiered. Like if we're running out of time or we have a lot of people, we may not ask question 3, or we'll reward it if it is 5 to 6 people. We'll work it out. But you will get to see a version again before we actually interview folks at our December meeting. This does seem like a good time to say to everybody, like, this will be a big portion of the December meeting. Like, just be ready.
And Annie, I had a question.
Yeah.
At the last time's student region interview, based on the number of questions, we had certain people ask certain questions. So how are we going to be asking the question at next meeting? Are they going to be pre-assigned to people, or what's it going to be like?
That's a really good point, Niv. Do you feel like that went well last time? Because we could do it the same way again.
I actually like that format just because, I don't know, those are my thoughts. I thought it went very smoothly last year. I obviously wasn't there the year before. But obviously, if multiple people want to participate, we can have different questions assigned to like 2 people, 3 people, and then depending on the number of candidates, they can switch off.
Yeah, and Annie, I agree with Niv from last year. I do think it went well. I think it was effective. So even if we did that and just tweaked it a little bit, it would be perfect.
I agree. I think it went well too. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. All right. We'll do it like that. Done. So we'll get you all another version before the big day. And you'll also get the packets, right? You're going to get to see those packets. So you'll be able to help think about everything before you even meet the people. All right, next up, we are going to switch gears yet again. This is going to speak to the agenda setting, but also to the director's reports. We're going to be talking about the hard work of Dan. Dan could not be here today, but it's my understanding that Dan debriefed a couple of you. I don't remember who, to talk and lead the discussion on the executive order. But let me proceed again. Lots of attachments for you from last night. Let me proceed by first sharing the executive order itself. So here we go. There was an executive order. There have been many of these. So I had to learn, I had to ask some questions and learn myself about what this means, because we are anticipating a presidential transition. So the executive order itself says in it that it will take effect in 60 days. For us, that I believe that means November 21st or 22nd for this particular executive order to be in place. Many schools are aware of this executive order and the potential implications of said executive order on things like diversity trainings and things like implicit bias trainings that are taking place across higher ed with very good intents and very good impacts. So with that, I just wanted to point you all yet again, this is where that link in the email would take you so that you can see the primary source. There are some very interestingly worded things. For example, the title says combating stereotyping, but if you read the actual content, you may have a different impression of what the content says in contrast to the title's message. For lack of a better way of saying that. So if I hate to put anybody on the spot, but who in the room did Dan tell to work on this?
I Dan didn't tell me to work on it, but we did discuss it a bit, and I made some notes kind of that I'm just gonna blow through real quick if you guys will give me a moment. All right, so this executive order, it's a ban on certain topics, words, ideas, and material amongst federal programs, departments, as well as recipients of federal funds, grants, or contracts. It came into effect immediately, parts of it, right? So later dates in the executive order, from my understanding, okay, I'm not a lawyer, but other dates cited in the EO refer to either new contracts or dates that information reports are due from grants managers or whatever they're due to the government regarding this ban. The executive order, overall, it's pretty vague language. You really have to read between the lines, as I think Zakia mentioned that. It's kind of got an uncertain impact on the future. Media, from what I'm reading, speculates it will be rescinded quickly after the new administration. However, I haven't been able to confirm that anywhere in writing. Nothing explicit, at least. A cursory search just by myself of the USM for, one of them, I didn't write this down, but one of the main academic theories that this is kind of trying to ban, it's called critical race theory, which also touches on like intersectionality and implicit bias. It kind of, everything in the social sciences, for me, kind of touched on this as well. Let's see. So it's a cursory search of the USM for critical race theory resulted in several academic journal articles from faculty, professor that's authored CRT material, an entire CRT initiative in a sociology department. So it does have a big impact on academics amongst the USM community. And personally, like it really helped me understand in my undergrad kind of the world around me and how politics was affected. People are affected by politicians and why we think the way that we think. And I think it has a place in the social sciences. Personally, that's my opinion. But I understand that a lot of people, it's a controversial topic and we represent students. So just because everyone here at the council might feel one way doesn't mean that all, over 6 figures of students feel that way as well. I think the most important part is that no academic theory should be banned. Theories should be disproven and challenged by research, analysis, and challenging the reliabilities and validity of a theory. I think that students have a right to be exposed to any academic work, any words, any books, any thoughts. Previous bans of CRT material resulted being deemed unconstitutional in court. This has been brought to court right now, but nothing has happened with it yet. The executive order, to me, has echoes of un-American activities from McCarthyism to me, asking people to rat on each other. There is a part in the end where you're supposed to contact anyone if you feel uncomfortable, and just for their thoughts or their discussion or anything. I think that a USMSC statement could be a brief statement opposing this government stance against freedom of thought or expression. I don't think that we need to have a research paper. As I said, it's really vague language, so it's really hard to define the impact that this would have. I think that the benefits of a statement from the student council, it would be to support students who work within these areas and who are learning these theories or working with these theories. Could support students' freedom of education, which we all benefit from, whether you support these theories or not. And it would promote the USMSC by sharing concrete examples of how we can take action and be impactful. The end.
Annie, if I may go next, just in support of what Laura said, again, this statement is just it's something to kind of get it out there. If we can be transparent, SUNY was originally who was the students that took a stand on this matter, and they kind of released it, which prompted student affairs, which was Dan, to kind of go after it a little bit more. I think that we don't have to necessarily how we did DHS. I don't think we have to make a stand like that. However, I think we say something to say we're in support. We're not really choosing a side, but we do want people to understand what can possibly happen even with the new administration.
Annie, this is Joe, and I wanted to make sure that people understood a couple of things on this executive order. We did share the concerns and issues that the student council had with Catherine Bainbridge, who is our assistant attorney general in charge of the educational division. She in turn shared all of those comments with Attorney General Brian Frosch. And in fact, there are several state attorneys general that have written a letter opposing this, including the Maryland Attorney General. But it's Catherine's understanding that they are holding off on a lawsuit because they believe, in fact, that given the election results, this will be reversed very quickly. The other thing that I want to make sure people understand, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Laura. It is vaguely written. And if you hear from the microphone and a podium, people in fact say what it says, it really sounds different when you read the words on paper. It is in fact much narrower on paper than the broad sweeping statements that have been made for, or at least some of them that I've heard from the podium. And one of the points that I think is important to one of your comments, Laura, is that it does not, this executive order does not forbid the presentation of any of these in an academic setting. It does say you can't propose one side or the other. It has to be presented as a theory and or whatever, and a balanced presentation. The focus here is primarily on formal training programs. But in fact, that would be training programs for all of our institutions because we all receive federal funds. So it is important to us and so on, but I did want everybody to understand the situation that Maryland as a state has stepped forward on this, which I think is a good thing here. This is one of the reasons that I'm trying to find the appropriate back channels to the Biden transition team so that the general statement can be made to them too, and they know. I have not heard yet of the right person to get some of this to, but I will continue working on that. So if you have a statement, I will stay in contact with Annie and whoever else, Annie, you want on this, to, if we find the right person to send this to make sure that the transition team hears the concern.
We have a question in the chat for you, Joe. Are any USM programs or institutions at imminent risk of impact from this executive order? Counseling programs, professional development, integrated, trauma informed care, et cetera.
Are the programs themselves at risk? I would say no. I think that the people presenting things in some of these trainings are re-examining, for example, their slides or thinking about some of the points that they make and maybe modifying their language in some ways. So, for example, the executive order does not forbid or deny the importance of training on implicit bias. It does say very directly that it would be considered against this executive order if in fact there were general statements made that applied to one whole group, whether that is by race, ethnic group, or gender, for example. So that to say that all green people are stupid is an inappropriate thing to say, but to say that there are people out there that can be pretty dense about hearing various things would not be an inappropriate kind of thing. Nor is it inappropriate to clearly state that everybody does have implicit bias because we're all human. It's the applying that to specific groups that is the challenge. And any of you who are reading some of this anti-racism literature right now, there are some pretty strong statements about implying that everybody belonging to one group or another has a certain characteristic. So for the time being, I'm going to suggest that trainers will back away from that slightly, but we are not, let me reiterate, we are not lowering the priority of the USM to, in fact, continue to push very hard on the diversity, inclusion, and equity agenda that we have going forward. The chancellor and the chairman of the board have made that very clear, so that we are going to pay attention to some of the details here. We are going to keep our fingers crossed that this is one of the first executive orders that gets reversed. And I will keep you all apprised if I hear anything more from the Attorney General's office.
Thank you, Joe. Just so I do my due diligence, I'm going to this is a link again that you all were sent. So if you have things, I do encourage all of you to read the statement that Dan is working on. And Dan is including government relations and diversity, equity, inclusion directors as well with this. So please do check it out. Check out the other resources so that you can be informed about this, and let people know what you think and what you think your constituents would feel about this, any potential or already happening implications. So with that, I just want to make sure that you all saw the draft, you know how to access it. If you can't, request for access, etc. Just so Dan knows that he's feeling some support in his, it was pretty cool how proactive he was about this. So just know your directors are on the lookout for things and trying to look out for everybody. So with that, we will move into our,
there's one more question, Annie.
Oh yeah, oh sorry. What do we got here? So would this executive order be considered to be censoring certain parts of training and education? I'm not entirely understanding this. Does anyone have an answer for that? I do not feel like an expert on this either, by the way.
There would be certain perspectives within a training that would have to be pulled back on. I would suggest, I also think that if taken to its most complete interpretation, that in fact some of the very difficult discussions that many of us feel that we need to have, especially around systemic and structural racism in our country, I think some of those discussions would be deemed off limits. And that's one of the areas where certainly the chancellor and the members of the board are feeling that we really need to do what we can to in fact get this executive order rescinded. But as all of you know, an executive order comes into being with the stroke of pen of the executive, whether that's the president for the United States or the governor for the state of Maryland. This is not law, it is an executive order, and it does not go through a commentary process that regulations go through. So it comes out and voila, it is what it is. So right now, as the attorney generals who were ready to, in fact, mount a lawsuit against this, which is the one way that it could be rescinded. And there have been a couple that in the last 24 hours that have been deemed illegal. But we will have to push back in ways that we think we can. But I think our greatest hope is that in the next 60 days or 68 days, however many days there are left before we have a new administration in place, that we can hang on and we certainly don't lose our intention and our priority of pushing forward and continuing and in fact deepening these serious conversations that we believe we need to have.
And just if I could just offer just a couple other quick things. You know, the order, it seems, was actually effective back in September, as soon as it was issued, right? And so it's already been a couple of months. Perhaps we haven't really seen any immediate impact so far. Holidays are approaching, new administration. So for what it's worth, it looks like we'll be okay. You know, but my only concern, you know, and just to be clear, that it talks about training for federal agencies, but for institutions, it's not just focused on training. It's focused on how the federal grant money is being used in any shape, form, or fashion with regard to those forbidden concepts. So it's a little different for universities, right? It isn't necessarily just training. It could be anything that universities are doing. So to Joe's point, just being cautious until everything is, you know, made different. But yeah.
Bernetta, can you hold your breath for 68 days?
I will try. Yes. We will enjoy the holidays and we will continue the great work we're doing around.
That's right. We'll look for sunlight wherever we can find it.
100%. And thank you, everybody, because I've read through things and I felt a lot like you, Khalil. I was still confused. So I appreciate everybody helping me try to understand that. And that was after lots of reading on it. I was still like, I don't know how this will actually play out. So thank you, everybody. So yeah, do keep that in mind. And I'll relay things that were brought up today. We'll relay them back to Dan for sure. Okay, so as we had up before, I'll bring it back up again as we prep. This is kind of a logistical question I'm going to toss out here. Zakia, are we good to do breakouts today? Is that going to be okay logistically?
Well, we are good because my colleague from the system office, Mr. Hayes, Frederick Hayes, is going to help break folks out. I sent several chat messages to some of you because I couldn't remember if you were an undergrad or a graduate student. So if you got a message from me, please respond. And then once Fred hits the button, if there are some undergraduates left in the graduate breakout, just identify yourself and he'll move you.
Excellent. Well, without further ado, Laura will be leading grads and Bernetta will be leading the undergrad breakout sessions. And let's have those last, in the interest of time, let's have those last 25 minutes and then we'll come back and we'll just have a conversation about them all before we adjourn for today. So, okay, let's have that happen. And that would be 2:15, am I right? 2:15? Did I do my time math right? I think that's 2:15. Yes, that would be 25 minutes. All right. Thank you all and enjoy your breakouts. I'll be in the grad student one as well.
I don't know if I ever got an assignment for a room or my thing is just frozen.
Oh, you're with me, so I think you're in the right room, Dan.
Oh, perfect. So none of the above.
I think you're in the right spot for us grad students.
Oh, we moved already?
Hello, yes, this is
think
Fred. I believe that.
Undergraduates are moved, grad students are staying here.
Oh,
Yes,
Oh,
this is Fred.
perfect.
This is Fred Hayes from USM. I believe that yes, the undergraduates are now in the other room, and that we are here in the graduate room.
I'm an undergrad and I'm still here.
Yeah, I'm an
Okay.
undergrad and I'm still here also.
Okay, I just went by the list that you gave me. So, who needs to move then? Randy and Lashana.
Gordon and
Yes.
Lashana.
All right.
And Essence.
Oh, in Essence. Hey, Essence.
Hey, I'm here. Hi.
Hey.
All right. Give me just a moment, please.
Annie? So UMB's grad school rep, Emily, it's her first meeting. So could you give a little overview? There might be some new people also, just a quick overview about what we do in these breakout rooms.
Sure thing. Hello, new people, and welcome back, continuing people. All right, so During USMSC meetings, we like to give a chance for there to be discussions based on graduate student specific issues and undergraduate student specific issues. And this is our chance for that. So we usually do, 25, 30 minutes of time, and we talk about the things that we have in that agenda setting form that I was showing the top topics that came up. Some we kind of go around and people say what their institution is and what's going on for them and what's on their mind, and we take notes, and we do a lot of things behind the scenes with those notes, but we also take this time to share best practices. So if you're in this room and we're talking about COVID-19 and somebody in here is like, hey, because I know this is an example, hey, we just did a resolution saying, we would like to have the opt-out option again for grades, either opt into a grade or opt into pass fail. Then somebody else could be like, hey, we haven't done that yet, but we would like to. Would you send that resolution to me? I'd like to see how you wrote it. Like that kind of example, just as like a real life example that could happen. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Hi, they're sending me to the undergraduate breakout room now, but while I'm in here, can I ask a question specifically to the graduate student? Okay, sorry. I can
No
be
problem.
sent again afterwards. Okay. So basically we spoke with our provost this week about that specific issue about pass fail, and she said that the only way that would be, well, her primary concern is whether or not it would come back to bite the students when applying to certain graduate schools like law school and medical school and things like that, if there are a bunch of passes on their transcripts and things like that, or passes and fails. So she said that the only way that she'd be in support of that was if there was a shift in the national landscape concerning like graduate programs, and saying that they would be more so understanding or lenient when it came to certain things or certain courses. So if you all could raise that with your, academic affairs personnel at your respective institutions, that would be great, just so we could, see what the landscape looks like in terms of graduate schools, because it's kind of hard for us to make that decision in our individual undergraduate silo, because we don't want our students to be negatively impacted when they're applying to school.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Jordan. You saved me from having to give that spiel, because that's the counter.
Oh,
so that's great. Awesome. It was awesome. I have to talk all the time in these things, so I appreciate that. That was great.
Oh no, thank you so much. You brought it up and then reminded me. But yes, okay, I can be sent now. Goodbye.
Thank you, Jordan. Yes, and that's a really robust conversation I was able to have with Bowie State, where that's been a big piece, is the back and forth on that. But I am also aware that folks are concerned and presenting, this is a really good example where not even all students may agree on it, but maybe it's still allowing for really important discussions. So if the opt-out can't happen, what could? Like, what are these other things that could be happening that offer compassion and flexibility, et cetera, et cetera. All right, with that, I will pass it over to Laura to lead our graduate student breakout room.
Okay. Okay, so number one topic, you guys want to talk about COVID-related issues. I think that pass-fail falls under that. So if anybody has any input on what's going on with COVID at your school, anybody got concerns about?
I can chime in.
Thanks, Tangela.
Yeah, so I received my master's from University of Maryland Global Campus, but I'm now taking classes with UMB for global health management. And every day, even on weekends, they send out a link for you to answer if you're going to be on campus or not. I guess that's the way for them to keep track on maybe like contact tracing, just in case if it was a case of COVID cases spreading around. So every day it's like it's like a series of 3 questions. And it's also a section where you can enter if you have been tested for COVID and the date, and you can enter that as well. So I think that's a pretty good idea in order to keep track of the amount of cases as far as for the UMB campus. However, but I haven't received any updates as far as our UMGC campus, so I'm not sure how they keep track of that.
Yeah, and I think with UMGC, since everything is virtual already, there isn't really a prevailing need to do that. I know that they've advised that faculty and staff be remote as well, so even there are significantly fewer people with a presence in Largo at the main campus institution. But one thing I did want to bring up related to COVID is that I feel like, particularly the demographic that the USMSC represents is still sort of in the mindset that they were over in the summer of things that are a little bit more relaxed. And we cannot emphasize how important it is for people to take the next few weeks very, very, very seriously and vigilantly. If everyone between Thanksgiving and Christmas can be as aggressive and protectionist as they were in April, we will have a much better outcome for our community with COVID. So that might be something to add to our social media or add to outreach on our campuses and with our other student councils. Because it's very, very important that people understand that, especially if they are going to transition back home and out to campus, or if they're going to be connecting with students while they're still on campus.
I agree with that because I've been watching CNN a lot. And one of the things that they have been emphasizing is to, if you can at all, avoid traveling or even being around groups of family during the holidays. If so, they were saying that the rate will be totally out of control by then, although it is now, but that's what they are in fear of. So if it could be something more of a widespread notification as far as like mask or anything that could assist as far as with the rates.
I had something I could bring up. So Emily's a grad school rep, but I just want to chime in just based on our previous USGA meeting is a lot of students have been having issues with transparency with regard to some of the decisions being made. And I'm wondering for the other campuses, has student input been solicited when important decisions have been taken? Because from UMB, we haven't heard much about what might be happening post-Thanksgiving. Especially, I don't know, I think they're probably waiting to hear from the governor what Maryland's going to look like post-Thanksgiving, but there's a lot of uncertainty among students just based on how things will be. So I'm just curious how other campuses, whether there's communication with your administration, or have there been similar concerns amongst your students?
I think, didn't I recently see on social media, I'm not sure which campus it was, but they told students to not come back after Thanksgiving.
Okay, that might not have been UMB unless I have not checked my emails. But for
That
UMB,
was,
I think that's Bowie.
College Park also did that.
Okay.
And I just want to add too, thank you, Niv, for bringing that up. So a lot of graduate students at UMB, so I would say, I mean, I guess I don't know the official numbers, but let's just say like 50% of graduate students are doing research on campus still. And there are a good amount of professional students who are doing clinicals on campus, and there has been no communication about post-Thanksgiving and what people should be doing. No change has happened in terms of like restricting people coming to campus or anything. So we do feel, a lot of graduate students feel kind of like in limbo, and even when our opinions are asked for, a lot of times the decision has already been made and they're like, thanks for your input, but we can't really incorporate it at this time. So it's been really frustrating.
I can imagine how that must feel, especially everyone else is going one way if you guys aren't getting the word.
Right. And I guess it's hard because I don't really know what the action is based on this frustration. I think a lot of us are trying to, at least within the grad school, what we're trying to do right now is we made this kind of informal survey that we are sending out just within the representatives of the Graduate Student Association to kind of get a feel for how they think their constituents are feeling. So we're trying to just get a general feel on how people generally are thinking that their needs are being met before we kind of raise more of an alarm to the administration. Because I think in our capacity as like representatives, we feel a lot of disconnect, and I just want to make sure that all the students are also feeling this disconnect before we move forward. So that's how we're trying to start before we take bigger actions. But if anyone else has any suggestions on things that have worked in terms of communicating concerns to admin, especially regarding COVID and like upcoming changes that might happen with cases increasing, that would be awesome.
Yeah, this is Joe Balfin. I think UMB presents an especially complicated situation because of the clinical rotations that the students go through. So School of Medicine, School of Dentistry, and so on down the line, the balance that, and I know these discussions are going on in a very deep kind of way, the balance between pulling students back and therefore causing them not to meet all of their requirements for graduation on time. Because many of the professional schools have to have a certain amount of clinical rotations and so on to meet their graduation requirements. The graduate school may be in a slightly different position. So I know those conversations are going on. One of the other conversations that I have been having with a couple of the task forces up there is when in spring, when the campus decided to pull students out of clinical rotations, those clinical sites did not have protocols in place and they did not have sufficient PPE for students to be in fact protected. That situation is slightly different now. So the calculus, the balance is in a different place. And I know they're doing that seriously. I can tell you that one of the things that we are doing for one of the schools at UMB and across the USM is that we have already started negotiations with MHEC, the Board of Nursing, and the Maryland Department of Health to once again have the nurses have an early out so that nurses can get graduated and into the workforce more quickly because of the concern of this rapid rise in number of hospitalizations and ICU visits.
I'd like to actually ask a question. Emily, this might actually be pertinent to the issues we have been having with regard to shuttle, but a lot of graduate students currently still come to campus for research, and a lot of them live off campus, means UMB is mostly an off-campus university, and the university decided to not have the shuttle for this semester. Now that's inconvenienced a lot of graduate students because currently we work very weird hours with the restrictions in place, but the decision was made and it's been impacting a lot of graduate students. I'm really curious how campuses that have PhD students who come to do research, whether their shuttle services have been terminated or what's the practice in place, because that's one thing which we have been receiving a lot of pushback from is, especially Emily has been a very staunch advocate for having the shuttle operating, which I agree with, but the university has been, they just made the decision not to have the shuttle. And we're very curious of other campuses who have students who require to go on campus, how they have been handling it.
Kia, I'm curious how UMCs has been impacted by this, because you guys do a lot of the lab work too, right?
Yeah, and also College Park, if we have a College Park representative here, I'm really curious how UMCs and College Park, whether they have terminated your shuttle, and if they still have it, how is it being paid for? Because that's been another question which you have been facing with regard to fees. Emily, am I correct on this?
Yes, that is all correct. Thanks, Niv.
Yeah, for UMCs, I think I haven't heard a lot of issues with transportation in particular. I know that might be an issue for like IMET students, like me, like living in Baltimore, so it's kind of a similar thing. But a lot of the other campuses, they're not in like big cities so much, so I'm not really sure about the transportation. But that's a good thing to check on, just if that's an issue for some students. But I do know that there's been a lot of just challenges in terms of lab work, because especially class-wise, the way UMCs is set up, it's been in a virtual environment before the pandemic. So transitioning to virtual really wasn't an issue in terms of classes. Like a lot of students were just like, okay, this is fine. It's not really that big of an issue. But lab work is absolutely an issue, especially for labs that have a lot of people and they're not that big, because our current restrictions are, you can only have like 2 people in a lab, depending on the size, or you have to do all these, depending on how big your lab is, that will dictate how many people can be in there at once. And they, I know at IMET, the director just like kind of gave everyone a warning, like, please be mindful of what type of experiment you're setting up, because if like, especially since cases are rising again, we're worried that we might have to shut down. And if you just set up like a multi-$1,000 experiment, and you just can't come back in, that would be like a huge waste of money. And so a lot of the stuff that we've been hearing from students is just either loss of funding because they can't do field work. That's been a really big issue for a lot of students is, they're supposed to go out on a boat and collect samples, but they can't. And so they lost an entire season of field work, which might set them back like a whole year for their degree, just loss of funding. So a lot of the issues with COVID have been pretty impactful in terms of like lab work, and especially at UMCs, a lot of students, most of what they do once they finish their classes is very lab dependent. So that's been an issue.
Yeah, Kia, I can actually second that. There was a lot of conversation recently about, if whatever they're thinking about post-Thanksgiving, or especially given the rise in cases in Maryland, when they're planning on notifying everyone in the community of their decision, and will they give students time to finish up a very important experiment, and will they give a timeline so that students can adjust appropriately? Because I think there's a fear very similarly to what your students are experiencing, where they start something that's very, very integral to the project and important, and then they have to shut down in a week or something. So trying to figure out that type of timely transparency is something very high priority right now for sure.
Yeah, and especially with like especially if you have like fish that are part of it, like you can't just leave your fish, they might die, and like just kind of the biological aspect of it, like you have to take care of the thing. So it's really hard to have, especially like just from personal experience, the first shutdown, it was like, oh, you have to leave after 5 o'clock today. I was like, I have all this algae, I have to find a way to like keep it alive or make sure it doesn't die because it's really important to my project. And it's really hard if you only have a couple hours, because some things you might need to go through a special process for long-term storage of something, as opposed to like, oh, I'll see it tomorrow and it'll be fine. So yeah, definitely more transparency is really, really important.
I also just wanted to mention, I mentioned earlier that UMCP is one of the schools that is shutting down post-Thanksgiving. They're actually going entirely virtual tomorrow. They pushed that up even more, but all of the graduate programs are exempt from that. There are a lot of programs, including my own, that are already virtual just because they don't have that in-person component that's a necessity. So I think the idea behind that was to protect lab work or other critical in-person facilities. I don't know how that's going to play out next semester, if they don't have people returning to campus, if they're trying to keep campus quote unquote closed. I don't know what lab work will look like in the spring. We have less field work than maybe UMCs does, but a lot of lab facilities. So hopefully that is a priority for the administration. I think the fact that the graduate programs are exempt from this early ruling indicates that they're focusing in on the lab work that like requires in person and there is no alternative. But it seems that every day we're getting a new guideline or a new update. So you guys are getting it as quickly as I am.
Dan, I actually had a question. If everything goes virtual next semester and maybe graduate students exempt, do you think your college shuttle would still be operating? And specifically, given everything's virtual, how is the college shuttle paid for, considering the fact that many students might not be on campus and virtual? Because with UMB, every student pays into it, and the rationale for not having it is, well, half the school isn't here. Some of the people aren't even in Maryland. So it's not fair to ask them to pay for the shuttle. But students who are going to campus, let's say it's a small percentage, but if the graduate student had to pay for the shuttle, it would be almost like $1,000 per student if it were just an opt-in for just a graduate student. So I'm really curious how College Park's handling the situation. I know it's completely different demographics. Y'all probably have 10 times the number of students we have probably, but I'm just curious because that might help guide UMB's advocacy in the future.
So without diving us into the fee waiver fiasco that Annie and I run the gauntlet daily, that aside, the fees for UMD are actually, I always use UMD in other spaces. We're all some version of UMD. For UMCP are frozen this year. So the funding for the shuttle is there. It's more about if for health guidelines, they opt to not use it at all. which would then raise questions of, okay, well then where's the money going? Like, what was the point of the fee at all? So I would hazard a guess that shuttle programs or other kind of in-person facilities that are designed for people that will still be on campus, even though the rest of the campus is shut down, will still be intact. I obviously don't know that for sure, but my thinking, so short answer, the money is there, so they can still do it.
Okay, no, that's helpful, because that's the one thing which, if students aren't paying the fees, it's like there's no money. The moment students can't pay the shuttle fee, it's like we can't have a shuttle. But it seems like at College Park, there's a different, I don't know, there is reserve money, or there's somewhere money on the couch that even if students aren't paying the shuttle fee, at least for this year, a transportation fee for this year, there can still be a shuttle in operation.
Yeah, and that freeze is just for this academic year. It might, translate to next year. I think there'd be a lot of backlash if it did, but at least through this semester, and I'm almost certain through next semester, unless there's some crazy administration adjustment, things are frozen as is.
Got it. All right, thank you. No, that's really helpful information.
Real quick, Dan, you asked 2 really hard questions that were good questions like a couple nights ago to Dr. Pines, and I'm wondering maybe the system might know for international students. Do you have those on hand? If not, you can, if you remember email, I'll get them to Joe and Zakia to try to get an answer.
Do I have my questions?
You know those questions you asked?
Yeah.
Do you have those?
I'll have to paraphrase them.
Okay.
But so the first was international students who are graduate assistants or any kind of other assistant, if they opted to stay in their home country after returning in March or April, lost their assistantship for this academic year because they cannot be paid as an employee living in another country. And so the question was, if an international student goes home for this holiday season, in itself, is that enough to lose the assistantship if they're home from middle of November to middle of January? And then I also asked, and then what happens if the spring semester shuts down and suddenly now they're home from the middle of November to August if they come back in the next academic year? Our university president, President Pines, indicated that almost certainly if they were only home for the holiday season, that would not be enough to lose the assistantship. I think that's fairly standard in a non-pandemic year anyways. He did not give an answer on if it was shut down through the spring semester. It's an issue that's been raised a few times, and candidly, they keep speaking it as a legal issue, and yet there seems to be no law around it. I think it's more of a employment choice to not, create contracts and not create employment opportunities for internationally abiding students. And the second, I think, was just for our campus, was about like COVID guidelines. Do you want me to ask that as well?
It was just the international ones, because I know everybody's got international students. So thanks, Dan, because maybe, hopefully, I see Joe taking notes. Maybe we can get an answer on that. We keep asking in different rooms. Maybe we'll get an answer for folks, because I do think I'll speak for College Park, and for those of you who can speak for other schools, international students have this extra layer of stress right now, and an extra layer of needing to know answers, and yet they do seem to be a little bit harder to get those answers, especially like concretely. So thanks.
I think we have about 1 minute left if we get the undergrad students back on time. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up with Joe and Annie in the room?
I'll just mention on that issue we just wrapped up. There is, and I can track it down, I don't know if it's entirely accurate because it's student compiled, but there's a list of what other comparable institutions are doing for international assistance. Off the top of my head, I want to say, I think Michigan State, University of Michigan, maybe University of Florida, Columbia. Now I'm stretching, but there's a lot of institutions kind of all over, up and down the East Coast and in the Big Ten, that are working with international students to keep their assistantships. It seems that within the state of Maryland, within the system of Maryland, it's just not an opportunity that's currently available. So, and obviously, you know, state laws will differ, but there does seem to be some kind of working model to get those assistantships intact for internationally abiding international students.
Okay, so with whatever time we have remaining, do you guys want to bring up, I think the second topic was diversity, equity, and inclusion? Does anyone have anything going on their campuses that they want to share? Thoughts on the EO?
I will say that at UMB, we are, I think probably NIV maybe has talked about this previously, but they're looking or doing has a search committee for a chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer at UMB that's going to hold like a executive position, like pretty high up at UMB. And there was discussions on how this executive order might influence that position. And from my understanding, they are still proceeding with the search committee, which is encouraging. And we do have student voice on that search committee, which is good too. And just overall, I've noticed that there's been a big push for anti-racist trainings at UMB, and that I've visibly seen that those efforts are getting curtailed by this executive order. I think, like we were talking about previously, how people are reassessing how they're trying to teach these and how they're going to roll them out. So I think there were plans to roll them out way sooner, and now there's been a delay. So overall, I see the effects of the executive order currently, but I am encouraged that things are moving along, which is good.
I see that from Frostburg, we don't have somebody from Frostburg in the room, but in their campus report, they wrote that they now have a diversity pledge at their university that is related to a commitment to have more diverse practices in hiring. So if folks are interested in that, I welcome you to let us know. We can connect you with Frostburg folks. They happen not to have both of their reps are undergrads, so they're never in our grad breakout.
I was going to say at UMCs too, since we have a smaller, like just community, we were able to have an open DEI meeting. So the DEI committee, I think they had been meeting like just as a committee privately, but then, you know, we had an open one so that the entire UMCs community could get on it. And that was pretty good. It was like I think by the end of that, they determined like 3 priorities based on just input from the whole community. But the only thing that was kind of like just not like a criticism, but just kind of like a sense from everyone was just like, there's a lot of discussion, but we kind of want more action or something that shows that like something's happening. Because it's nice to have like priorities, but those don't mean a ton unless you do something with them. And I think what they're trying to do is be very strategic about it and, you know, make sure they're doing it correctly. So just one sense though, it's like, this is great, but we want to, you know, we don't want to lose momentum and we want to see like something concrete come from it.
I feel that, Kia. I feel like sometimes things can get lost in strategy or dying committee. One thing that we talked about earlier during the presentations was the proposal to expand the Board of Regents to include greater representation from the other schools. Did anybody have any thoughts on that? You guys for it? Against it?
I guess it's more so like, what would that look like? Are you proposing having like an increase in students there, or?
It was an increase in the amount of regents on the Board of Regents for the University System of Maryland to include people with a greater variety of professional experience and graduates from other schools in the system.
Yeah, I can say every time I'm kind of silent, that's assent more so than anything else. So I think it's great that they are specifically saying, you know, we have these colleges and universities that we're specifically going to draw on some of our historically Black campuses to ensure that those people are represented, and to ensure that civil rights, justice, advocacy experience is represented. So I think it's overall a good direction.
All right, I do think that we're about to go back to the main room, just to let you know. I say that, and then there's like a pause, but feel free to keep going too. But if anybody gets cut off, that's why.
Yeah, if just in case I get cut off, I did want to pitch for the mental health committee. One issue that has also been raised is the idea that maybe students aren't believed when they present for accommodations on the basis of a mental health disability or cognitive differences. So that's something that we're also going to be tackling and would love to have your involvement in, is maybe even putting together some of those stories to push out to faculty and within the system of students that have mental illness or differing abilities, and how they socialize within the campuses, and just basically believe students when they say they have a struggle. Let's start with belief.
Mm-hmm. Totally. All right, I think I see people rejoining, so. We're almost there. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hope the breakout sessions went well. We'll go ahead and we'll do quick, we'll do some debriefs from those. We'll start with the undergrads. What did undergrads talk about today?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I haven't had a chance to put my notes together, Annie. We talked about COVID, of course. And just that, you know, different campuses are still doing different things. It was noted that a lot of the plans, even though some are shutting down and some are staying open, a very small number are staying open, right? Maybe just a couple. But that a lot of these plans were already in place at the start of the semester. And there's been some adjustments, right? But, and there'll maybe continue to be adjustments. So what we're seeing now and what everyone has planned for the spring may continue to change by the time spring actually gets here. We talked about how, for instance, Salisbury, one of the reasons why they're able to stay open is because they've been doing really well with their testing. They have large scale testing. Their positivity rate remains low. They have weekly testing. And they're even attacking this mental health issue, right? So they have counseling centers where I think David mentioned they contracted with an online company and they're offering group sessions, some of which are geared towards underserved communities and specific groups like African-American women and athletes and things like that. But across the board, there's not a whole lot of concern right now in terms of COVID. Most operations or everything's still kind of just going as they were. So there wasn't a whole lot of concern or anything different from the last time that we met. Another thing that we talked about was actually a little bit about student fees, but more specific to athletics in the gyms and recreational facilities. So there was some concern that students don't really have an outlet, don't have a facility they can use for, you know, whether it's the gyms or other types of facilities. And so we heard different examples of what's happening. Some of the stronger examples were just how they were able to keep their facilities open and by using like an appointment or reservation based system to keep the density down and to still make that available to students that are actually on campuses. So other than that, you know, I don't think a lot of students aren't happy about the transition, right? And having to go back home. So there is some concern there. But I think that was the gist of it. And if I forgot anything critical, guys, feel free to jump in.
All right, sounds good. That sounds like you covered a lot. Very cool. And Laura, how did the grad one go?
Okay, Annie, feel free to jump in and add or fix anything. I took 3 pages of notes, and it's all hand scribble. So hopefully I'm translating this right. All right. So we started off talking about the all the COVID, right? So Beth mentioned that we really should be emphasizing to our students and our communities, please take the next few weeks very seriously. And if we could possibly add that to our social media, talk to our councils. Tangela mentioned minimizing travel to stop the spread of COVID. And then we kind of got into why that is so important and how it directly affects us as students. There is a lot of lab work and potentially clinical rotations that are being affected by that, which can affect students' ability to meet the requirements to graduate on time. There is a lot of disconnect between what's happening and what the students know. There isn't really a timeline. There is a big request. Emily Smith, thank you for your first meeting, and I really loved all of your input. But yeah, really emphasizing like that there is a request for information, transparency, all that, so that students can prepare. You know, they have projects and experiments and everything like that going on, that you can't just leave overnight and like he said, your fish will die. So that's a consideration. Joe mentioned that USM is negotiating with MHEC and the Board of Nursing to help facilitate graduation, quicker graduation for some disciplines. Niv brought up shuttle services and accessibility for a lot of people about how that's being impacted for students that have to get to campus to do research, and the importance of that. We talked about how different schools are shutting down in different ways. I think it was some of them are shutting down as soon as tomorrow, and then some of them are still waiting on words on what's going to happen. Graduate student programs are exempted on College Park campus because they've taken into consideration some lab work. And then Dan has some good questions about international students possibly losing their assistantships if they go home for the holidays and then stay because of COVID shutdowns. And there really isn't a resolution or answer for that one right now. Then we moved into DEI a little bit, talked about there's a UMB search for a chief DEI officer, and it's a positive thing. They're including a lot of student impact. There's a big push for anti-racist training, and that's kind of been curtailed because of the EO right now. Kia from UMCs was talking about how their community allows them to have a really open DEI discussion. And there is, however, some frustration in the lack of action. It's a lot of talk, a lot of strategy, very little action. And then finally, we got into mental health a little bit, and Beth is pushing for increasing awareness for mental health. Please believe your students when they say that they have any kind of difficulties or whatever is going on, and gathering those stories to help raise awareness. Also a push for the mental health committee if you're interested.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Laura and Bernetta. Does anything that wasn't covered in those that folks want to bring up real quick, or questions like where you heard something and you're like, hey, could that school share that with us? If that makes sense. So like an example would be, we don't have like okay, I'll put a real example because that'll get the ball rolling. So I'm wondering, Thomas, like for example, we don't have a Frostburg person in our grad breakout rooms, but we were interested in what you all had in your campus report, which was the diversity pledge for more diverse hires. What does that look like? And could you share info with the group?
Yeah, so I appreciate you bringing this up. So our newly formed Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee on our SGA was looking for things to do, and they decided on creating this pledge that we are going to send to the administration, which essentially calls for a more diverse hiring of employees, both faculty and staff, at the university. Before COVID and during COVID, there was only one African American woman in the president's cabinet, and she was recently let go. Recently, as of like towards the beginning of the semester. I can't remember exact dates, but she was let go as the director of admissions, I believe, because our admissions were going down. And that was a whole big thing because students lost that person that they looked up to in a higher up position who they could relate to. And so that took both the only woman out of the cabinet, but also the only person of color. And so we decided that we need to hold the university accountable and make sure that they aren't just not looking at those candidates. So it was recently, the language was recently finalized last week or the week before. I'm pretty sure it was last week. And we are now waiting. I don't think we've given it to the administration yet, but that's coming soon. So, but the language is complete and we have vetted it. So expect more from that at a later date.
Cool. Thanks, Thomas. Another one of the campus reports that had something in it, I was like, huh, that was unexpected, was if April, if you're still on and if you're able to talk, tell us about this Grammarly subscriptions for all the students. What's up with that? What led to that? And are you all excited about that?
So our previous treasurer, who ended up having to leave us, launched this campaign to provide students with Grammarly subscriptions. So I believe we started out with 150 subscriptions and students could sign up for that to get the code for a year. And that went very quick. Like all the subscriptions are gone. So we haven't had much done with it since then, but our writing center wasn't very happy about it. Sorry, hold on. Can you guys stop?
All good.
So then we had a meeting with the provost about Grammarly and creating more subscription services for the students. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. I can update you guys as we learn more.
Makes sense. Thank you. I was curious if that was controversial. Does anyone have questions about that?
Annie, I actually have a question for Joe on that. Joe, do you know if they're buying subscriptions from a university standpoint? Is there any coordination that can be done there with Mike Eismer and his team as far as, subscriptions at scale?
We do. We have an organization called MEEC, which is the Maryland Enterprise. I can't remember exactly what MEEC stands for. But in fact, we do a huge number of system-wide and in fact, statewide contracting. One of the reasons that we can get some of our pieces so inexpensively is that we do the purchasing for all of K-12 in the state as well. So it could be that if there are specific questions, you can send them to Zakia and me, and we can actually ask either Mike Eismeyer or the director of MEEC if it is possible to do some sort of combined subscription. But we need to ask the question. We can't guess,
Yeah.
But if you raise the issue directly with us, we can always ask.
Very cool. Yeah, I've never seen anything like that on Campus Report. So thank you for sharing, April. And it looked like, Jordan, did you have something you wanted to ask about that?
I wanted to know like what that process looked like and if you could perhaps just send maybe an email out to saying what steps you all took to get that and like what was the objective and like what was the motivation for that, because I honestly would be curious to know about the Grammarly subscriptions.
Yeah, so I can get a statement from our previous treasurer because I'm not totally sure how he did it. He's an enigma. But yeah, I'll try to send that out later to you guys.
Thank you so much.
Fred Hayes, our USM support member here, reminds me it's the Maryland Education Enterprise Consortium, MEEC. Thank you, Fred.
This isn't to a specific school because about 4 of the schools had this in their report, so I'm just going to put it out there. Concerns about spring. I know that we talked about those a little bit, at least in the grad student breakout room. Are there questions remaining that you all want to ask your peers while we're all together about inclusion of students in spring planning processes or different resources as things continue to be virtual? If you have questions or things you want to pose to see if your peers are doing something that might be helpful to you, please feel free to ask those now. Yeah.
I'm curious to know, hi, I'm curious to know if other schools that are looking at hybrid learning are, how do I phrase this, are being given the option, are students, I'm sorry, if students are being given the option to, if they don't feel comfortable coming to class and their class is hybrid, to do it solely online. I know that came up earlier this year, and the administration guaranteed that students, if they didn't feel comfortable, wouldn't have to. But in the communication, wow, word vomit today. The communication about the spring semester went out via email. It wasn't explicitly stated that they still had that choice. And after speaking with the Vice President of Student Affairs, it's looking like they still do. But I'm just curious for you all that will have in-person components. I know there are things like labs, but just holistically, is it looking like students are going to have that option if they don't feel comfortable coming in?
If I could tackle at least what Frostburg's doing, we were 70. I agree with you on word vomit. We were 70% hybrid this semester and 30% completely online. I know that this semester we had students who weren't comfortable and opt out of the in-person hybrid classes and take them fully online. However, I do know that our, I believe, president or vice president of student affairs or provost, not sure, in one of our SGA talks with the 3 of them, they had said that previously that was allowed this semester. However, they're not going to allow it next semester. So if you still feel uncomfortable, that's okay. Just plan your classes to be completely online, which is a little problematic because a lot of the classes that students need to progress in their degree track and educational track are those hybrid classes that do require those in-person and online components. So there is that little bit of concern, but I know that at least at Frostburg, students are being advised, if you don't feel comfortable, that's completely okay. Just know that it's on you to schedule completely online.
Yeah, I would just kind of piggyback on the problematic piece is just that certain sections may not be offered online or certain courses may not be offered online, but that's real. I had a kind of follow up in terms of academic affairs, unless someone wanted to respond to that on what their institution's doing before I change the subject. Well, if not, I'll push forward with the push for synchronous classes. It came up a little bit during MHEC yesterday, and it's kind of been an ongoing conversation. But there is an ongoing issue that students are raising to the SGA and to the university about professors teaching classes with asynchronous formats when that's not what the class was originally designed or intended to be when they enrolled. I just would ask what other institutions are doing to combat that, because I know that our chosen, best practice at Towson is to do synchronous learning. So I know that the provost is just kind of like, I can encourage it, but when, anyone that's understands like the administration and like legislation and stuff like that. When you say you discourage something, that's not necessarily a mandate. So that can be a little frustrating too. So I don't know if you all have any ideas about encouraging. Not even, now I'm using the word too, but making sure that professors are teaching with the proper pedagogy for their students to be successful.
Does somebody from, I don't know, Ashley, are you still on here? You have such great things to say about synchronous, asynchronous, and like what UMGC does. Are you on?
Yeah, I'm on here.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'm wondering if, like, say for instance, like a class isn't available at your university or it's hybrid and you don't feel comfortable, like, is there maybe like an exception where somebody could take a course at another university where it is offered online, just at least like temporarily?
So I can answer that to some extent. I know there's the, what's it, like the inter-enrollment program or something like that. Because I know like when I took finance, I didn't take finance at College Park. I took finance at University of Baltimore because it was online, so I could be more flexible with my schedule. That was like a few semesters ago, but that's like an ongoing thing. So I'm sure students could do the same thing. They would just have to check if the credit transfers in their own individual school or like college within their school to make sure that it works with whatever credit they're seeking.
Yeah, maybe it could be like, because I know the MHEC has that policy that if a degree doesn't exist in the state of Maryland, they can get in-state tuition to like compensate for Maryland not having. So it's kind of like the similar concept, but in-state and just like course by course. So yeah, that could be like a solution for that.
Right. Let me tell you that interinstitutional registration is possible now, and Dan stated it pretty clearly. We're working very hard on the enhancement of the articulation system platform, ArtSys, so that it in fact would include interinstitutional registration to make it much, much smoother. We're getting a lot of pushback on from campuses, especially our community college colleagues, that are not willing to put money on the table to enhance ArtSys, and we simply don't have the resources centrally to, in fact, enhance it to the degree that we want to. We're ready to go if we can find the funding. All of the agreements have been signed. But IIR, interinstitutional.
Cool. If there's a link or anything, Joe, where people could learn more about the inter-university stuff, feel free to put in the chat, or I can include it in a future. If there's some, that's awesome, Dan, that you were able to do that. I don't know if there was a certain staff member you had to talk to, or or how you figured that out. But if there's something people should be looking for.
No, it was real easy. I just knew I didn't want to take finance at College Park because I know it was harder and I wanted another class in my schedule, and that wasn't synchronous. And so I knew it was a program, just had to get something signed by my advisor, something really simple process.
Oh, great. Love simple processes. And since we're already talking to you, Dan, you're one of our folks with a good question related to spring calendars and USM. So go for it. Go next with yours.
So Joe, this question's kind of more directed at you and the system, but I'm wondering, I know the answer is going to be it's up to each individual school, but I'm wondering what the discussions have been about spring. Talking to my Big Ten peers and schools across the country, it's pretty clear that the trend right now is cancel spring break, add another week to winter break, and put a few different mental health, reading day, whatever you want to call it, throughout second semester. And so I'm wondering what system discussions have been in relation to that.
That actually mirrors much of the conversation that is going on. There's still so much that is unknown, but some of the campuses are ready to declare that they will not have a full week-long spring break as they usually have. But there is the immediate add-on, Dan, with what you just said, that we all know that we need, not only the students, but faculty and staff need a break every once in a while as well. So we are trying to make sure that, and I think over the next, I'm going to say, by early December, we ought to have much more clarity on the plans for each individual campus.
Awesome, thank you. I'm sure you may not be able to say specifically which campuses, but is it a majority of our campuses that are looking like right now they're gonna move to that alternative break model, or is it still not really clear yet how many of our campuses are doing that?
It's not really clear, but I think that the dominoes are falling toward not having a full week-long spring break, and it all has to do with, once again, students leaving and coming back, and what the COVID situation will be, not only around our campuses, but everywhere else. What we've learned this semester is that our campuses, living as campuses, have done an amazingly good job of following the public health protocols and keeping our positivity rates down. It's worked as well for us as it has almost anywhere else in the country, so that if we continue to keep at that pace, rather than having this week-long gap for students who might not want to stay on campus, they would want to go somewhere else, that is not going to be the wisest plan. But immediately, and I have to say immediately and with conviction, the leadership of the campuses immediately say, but we've got to pay attention to the mental health and the constant stress and strain, so that if we end up doing 2 or 3 longer weekends, there have been some campuses that said it's going to be better to do a Tuesday or Wednesday, because if it's just a long weekend, it kind of melds into things. So there's still a lot of discussion going on, but I want to assure the students that the balance between keeping people safe and in as much of a reasonable bubble as we can, but at the same time recognizing that the need for mental health support is very clearly stated.
Annie and everyone, there was something
Awesome, thank you so much.
Offer to kind of just adding to the point Joe is making. Since we're all virtual now, have we been looking at how we're staying plugged into students, right? It's very different when you're not on campus every day and you can hear and interact directly with them. So I'm curious to see how student leaders are continuing to monitor the pulse and have conversations and understand what the students' needs are.
Was that for someone specific or
for everybody, kind of, because it could be graduate, it could be undergraduate, but I realize we haven't really talked much about that. So I don't know if you're okay with that, Annie, but I'm just,
yeah,
that's okay.
100%. Jordan, you have something?
Yeah, I didn't want to like hop in anyway. Okay, so starting from the first thing, I know our SGA specifically, like on the student leadership side, we have regular polls on our social media platforms. Every General Assembly on Tuesday from 5 to 7 p.m. It's live streamed, so people can comment their student concerns there. There's a student concern and public participation item on the agenda every week. People can always reach out. If we have a meeting with the provost or with the president, we'll often publish the frequently asked questions and answers from that meeting. We spoke with her about it. She said that that's fine. We thought that went over really well. And we'll share that on a post on social media. Our director of communications will produce those. And those are pretty few and far between, because those meetings that we publish typically are about like larger issues. One is coming up, I believe, about the spring semester. So there's that in terms of like student concerns. And then we monitor, like, they add us on Twitter. We just look for like where they added us and stuff like that. In terms of resources, I know the counseling center they're doing like different groups. They're having, therapy, like same day appointments, and they have programming every day. I know that that's available every day, and I know a lot of students didn't know that that was available, so that was really, really nice. And one thing that we've been trying to do this year specifically is publicize more so the resources that we have in different university departments that kind of are the unsung heroes among us, like the counseling center or like different departments at our schools that don't always they aren't marketed to our students in ways that they'll receive it. Like, yeah, there's an email that's comprehensive that goes out every week, but students don't always read it. So we try to use our platform as SGA to push those. We have guest speakers that are able to come. I believe, Annie, you came to a General Assembly once, and we now have department heads come and share resources. The Counseling Center did that one time a couple of weeks ago. So that's been really cool. We're just trying to be almost overly communicative, but without overwhelming them pretty often. But the polls are definitely helpful, or like doing the little question thing on Instagram. We'll get a good number of responses for that, and our comment sections are typically kind of open forums. We'll monitor it here and there and say like, hey, let's just, keep things polite and, that kind of thing. Because sometimes people would just say mean things about faculty members, which we don't want. But, we use that as an open forum kind of thing too. But yeah, it's been cool. It's interesting because I feel like we're almost more connected to the students than we were before as SGA, when our office was always open, but students don't always feel comfortable coming into the SGA office and bringing their concerns to us. So I think over social media, we've almost felt more connected.
What else are folks doing in that vein? Like, how are you all keeping a pulse on what your constituents are feeling and thinking? Some of you mentioned town halls. Are there other things going on?
At Salisbury, we haven't. That was one of my initiatives at the beginning of the year, but it seems like I've been in a mitigation role for most of the year. But I definitely want to. Well, our forums, we transitioned them to completely online in a webinar format. Our forums they engage the student organizations and the leaders of the student organizations because I think in the past we've realized that that's where most of the information gets transferred is through organizations. I think we have about 150 or close to 150 student organizations that are active right now on our campus. And a lot of our students are involved and engaged with those organizations. So I think that's one of our major ways to get information out and to let students understand what's going on within the campus. In terms of COVID, we had our president's chief of staff, Eli Modlin, come one day, at one forum to give updates on the COVID response and updates on testing. And I apologize to him because they had Eli there for about I think 2 hours answering questions about COVID. So it's definitely beneficial to have town halls and forums to give students the opportunity to get the information that they need. I think one thing that's amazing that Jordan talked about was having those weekly. I think, like I said, it was one thing that I wanted to do coming into this semester, but it was kind of derailed by COVID. I think it will be beneficial for us as an SGA to have those conversations more often and with more than just student organizations and student leaders, because there may be a student out there that isn't involved, but he or she definitely wants to get the information that's important to their success as a student. So we're definitely going to be working on getting that information out in a broader sense into a broader range of students and community members.
I would also encourage other institutions, we're working on it now, to reach out to your leadership in terms of the university's communications and see if there's a way, if you personally cannot have access to the student listserv email, you can, ask maybe your VPSA to kind of have like a little snippet about when your meetings are or something like that. I know Dr. Vernon Hurt is our VPSA, and he's wonderful. He said he'd be open to that just because they won't give it to us for some reason, which I understand. But we, can't spam the students or anything. But yeah, and we also use, our student org channels as well, which is cool because they have their groups that follow them. So it's nice to use that. Definitely, David.
Thank you so much for sharing, David and Jordan. That was awesome. And thanks for asking, Burnett. Very cool. The only other thing I saw in a campus report, if I'm going to check to see if the person's still around because I know we're heading towards the end, Essence from Coppin. I was wondering, could you share a little bit about the, I hope I say it right, the counseling app, the Meta app, is that what it's called?
Yes. So our counseling center wanted to add that as a service. So the office is still able to take like students if they're willing or able, but the Meta app was just like kind of a connection to continue just to provide a different service especially given like the virtual setting. So it was just more of to kind of expand on the services that they have in office and make it more available to students off campus, especially considering like we're mostly like commuter students, like a commuter student university. So yeah.
And just for those who don't know, the Meta app is for mental health, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So it's one way that school is working to, it's one way that school is working to be more accessible with their resources, which is pretty cool. And maybe something we can look into is just how to, if you have something like that, I think College Park has something similar, but I don't know if the word ever got out. So helping students know those apps exist.
Cool. Now, also, can I add one thing?
Of course.
We also, for communication, the Student Government Association, we have a link on the website where students can click that, give us like their concerns or anything like they have questions on. It'll ask if they already reached out to anybody. And then it comes directly to us. So once we get that concern, we can kind of reach out to whatever department is needed. And then we kind of just reach back out to the student to tell what any updates or things like that. Or if it's just a collective, then it's something that we would normally share, like if it's online or like a town hall. So I would recommend, it's pretty easy. So yeah, that's also what we do.
Are they actually doing that, Essence? Are they?
Not as much. So we're trying to, we're actually going to revamp it, considering we have a much smaller board this year. So we have to change where the form actually gets sent to. It was originally our chief of staff, but we're kind of filling in for different positions because it wasn't really anyone there. But so we just have to redirect where it comes, and then we're going to push it back out for students to start actually doing that.
Awesome. Thanks, Essence. And well, with that, we just have like 3 minutes left. So I'm happy to say that we're going to adjourn now in case, but everybody please keep in touch between now and December and get ready to interview some great nominees from all your institutions. If you need me, please hang out. I'll be on for a few more minutes if folks need me.
Did someone say they were trying to take a picture?
Oh, you are so right. Thank you. Picture time. Sorry about that.
Yeah, if participants are interested in being part of the picture, can just turn on their camera.
You got it. Straighten up my hat.
I will give about a few seconds. Everybody can adjust their hair, their smiles, everything. Oh, I'm so happy to see everyone.
Right.
Awesome. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Going again. 1, 2, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you all so much. And Jordan, thanks for waving. That was a very nice touch, the photo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Niv. Thanks for taking those photos.
You're welcome.
Thanks everybody for coming. You know how to reach us if you need us in between.
And
Take
thanks,
care.
Fred, again for
Thank you. Have a great one.
Bye.
Oh my goodness.
Bye,
Sorry,
y'all.
it's my dog.
Thank you.
Dogs are welcome.
Okay. Okay. Bye.
Yeah, whoever apologized for their dog, dogs are welcome.
See you guys next time.
See ya.